All right, we are live. Welcome back, everyone. Over the last several weeks, we've been kind of looking at pre-Islamic Arabian history, kind of getting the true story. Islam teaches one story. They have a very whitewashed, wonderful picture of what was going on and how it was all leading up to Muhammad. In particular, we're going to be looking at Alexander the Great, or as he's known in the Quran as dhul-qarnyn. We're going to be getting some good evidence that the Jewish people tricked Muhammad into putting this information in the Quran, revealing that he is a false prophet in his desperation to prove himself, showing that he is not legitimate. Any opening words from you, Mary?
Whoops, there will be if I unmute myself, won't there? So I am going to. So remember last time we were talking about the Persian Empire, and next, what ends it is going to be Alexander the Great. I thought this would be a great opportunity to talk about dhul-qarnyn. And since we're talking about dhul-qarnyn, we're also talking about the Surah of Al-Kahf, that is the cave. So I would like to, for my little opening bit, read a little bit about a certain verse. If you'll share my screen, if you look in chapter 50 of Al-Kahf, let me see if I can make this bigger for, nope, can't make it bigger that way. I can make it bigger by doing this. Hang on. Nice and big. Is that bigger for you guys? Oh, yeah.
Oh, there
All
you go. That's better.
right. Okay. So 1850 said, and recall when we said to the angels. So Allah is here fussing at everyone. And he's saying, recall when we said to the angels, prostrate yourselves before Adam. And all of them fell prostrate except Iblis. Apparently he is an angel here, right? Yet he is also of the jinn, and so disobeyed the command of his Lord. Will you then take him and his progeny progeny as your guardians rather than me, although they are your open enemies? What an evil substitute are these wrongdoers taking? So he has progeny. What does progeny mean? Progeny
Offspring.
means offspring. All right. So Iblis has kids. Now, let's find out what other Islamic sources have to say about Iblis's kids. So, uh, so they talk about what's the meaning of this, and then here's the next part. What will you take him, O children of Adam, and his descendants? Progeny was trying to hide it a little bit because maybe might not think that progeny means descendants, but it does mean his offspring, right? His descendants as allies instead of me, while they are your enemy, etc. So it says that there was a difference of opinion as to whether Iblis had offspring from his loins. In Arabic, that will actually be from his back, by the way, because in the Arab society, they believe that semen comes from the back. Al-Sha'abi said, a man asked me and he said, does Iblis have a wife? I said, this is a wedding that I did not attend. Then I mentioned his saying, would you take him and his offspring as guardians? Then I knew that there would be no offspring except from a wife. I said, yes. So if Iblis is capable of having offspring without having a wife, he is able to do something that Allah himself apparently can't do, because it says, how can you say that, Allah has a son when he doesn't have a girlfriend? But if Iblis can have a son or other kids without having a girlfriend, that makes him able to do things that Allah can't do. But Mujahid has an alternative explanation. By the way, this is auto-translated. This is not available in English for some reason. I'm sure you're all astonished that this is not translated for us in English, right? Iblis entered it says his private vagina, but it actually means that he has on one leg, so he entered his private vagina and laid 5 eggs, and this is the origin of his offspring. And it was said, God Almighty created for him a penis in his right thigh and a vagina in his left. And 10 eggs, 70 male and female, emerge from each egg. That means every time that they have sex, he gets 10 eggs. And from each egg, there are 70 male and female devils. And they come out as they fly, and the greatest of them is with the Father. Or The most important of them among the sons of Adam is sedition, and some people said he has no children or offspring, and his offspring are devils. So, and some people are saying that it doesn't mean his actual children. Instead, it means like the sedition uh, that Iblis causes in your heart, your rebellion is his offspring. Is basically what they're saying. So that's pretty funny. And then someone says we don't have any proof of how they're reproduced and how he has offspring, but we just have to affirm it. I love it.
Yeah, that sounds like Islam, right? We don't have any evidence or proof, but we just affirm it. Doesn't make any sense, but we affirm it. We don't know how X can make sense in light of not X, which Islam also teaches. No worries. We just affirm them both and don't worry about it.
And then for the fun of it, I tried a whole bunch of different auto generation of of the devil laying an egg, and this is the closest I got to uh, an actual image. So I'm going to go ahead and save that because that's funny.
Awesome. Awesome. And the cats are having fun back there, playing with the green screen. Very funny cats.
So
Very funny.
let me kill this one, and we can go to the main presentation.
Oh, well, before we get to
Mhm.
that, I did want to say a couple words and play a little video. You may have a good idea what we're going to play. But first, a question from Una. What do you say to people who say they won't accept God unless they physically see him? And I mean, you could say a lot of things, but I would say, why would you expect to physically see a immaterial being? Do you expect to physically see love? Do you physically see the wind? Not being able to see something is a pretty ridiculous reason for not believing in it, would be my answer. Anything you want to add, Mary?
Nope. I think that what a lot of people mean is that they want to have something incontrovertible, something special for themselves. And I earnestly believe that everyone has enough evidence for them to believe that God does provide that to everyone, and that those who do not take the evidence that is necessary for their own salvation are doing so out of rebellion. And whenever they say, oh, well, I want this, I want that, they're only saying that because they believe that God won't give it to them. Most of the time, he won't, because they already have evidence sufficient for their faith, but they don't choose to accept it.
Excellent. And then, I guess that was the only question I wanted to take real quick there. Oh, there it goes. There goes the strip. I was like, what? I thought that was working. We do have a new animation today, especially for this stream. I think you'll enjoy that. You'll have to get to the website to see what it is, but you'll enjoy it.
I don't even know what it is, so
Yeah,
I'm
Mary
looking
doesn't even
forward
know
to it.
yet.
I'm like, you should do an animation for this. He's like, I've come up with something, but it's going to be a surprise, so I have no idea what it is.
But
So,
before anything else, let's get an introduction from Yusuf Estes here.
You might think I'm a Catholic, I'll never be anything but a Catholic. But I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to be honest. This is not for you to, start a debate, but just be honest. Was Jesus a Catholic? And it's not open to debate, so there's no point in opening that up, because you know and I know he wasn't. The Catholic Church was in business about 300 years before Jesus was born. It's on their website. Don't go like this. It's on their website. That's where I took it from. The Catholic Church was really started in Rome by Alexander the Great. Do you know what the word Catholic means? It means universal. It was the universal church for the Roman Empire. If you didn't join it, you could not be a Roman citizen. And it was opposed to the teachings of Judaism and opposed to the teachings of the early Christians for more than 200 and some years. And they were diametrically opposed to each other to the extent that it was the Romans killing the early Christians. Now, if you understand that and you go to their website and read, they didn't even take over Christianity until the year 325 AD. And when they did, they changed a lot of things, again, referring to their own website. But if you want to check it in Britannica or Americana or grow your encyclopedias, go ahead and read about the Catholic Church. When in August of 325 AD at the Nicaea Council, they took over, first thing they said was, let's change the date of the birth of Jesus to be the same date as that of Mithras, which was the god, one of the gods worshipped there, and also the sun god's birthday was the same day, December the 25th, believing it to be the shortest day of the year. And Constantine was a sun worshiper of Saul Invictus. Go to the website, read it for yourself. There are a lot of points, but not the least of which, even today, if you go in any Catholic church, and I have, you'll see so many portraits and statues and idols and images throughout the whole place that for the one who's never experienced that, for a Muslim who knows about these images, he'll be like, whoa, a'udhu billah. Whoa, what's this? The first time I walked in a Catholic church, I was about 10 years old. I was shocked. I was shocked at the idols and statues everywhere, because in the Protestant religion, we were brought up to believe that the second commandment was just as important as the first commandment. The first commandment in the Bible, in Exodus, is the same as the first commandment in the book of Deuteronomy. It says, I'm the Lord your God that brought you out of the land of Egypt in the house of bondage. You know no other God beside me. Beside me there's no other gods. Thou shalt not have any other gods beside me. How many in this room agree with that commandment? Raise your hand. You notice
Like half the Muslims aren't
are
raising their hands because they're
Oh
not paying
my
attention.
God, he raises his hand. He's like, oh, we're supposed to be raising our hands now? Oh, yeah.
For us as well. The second commandment you have clearly says, thou shalt not make any idol, any graven image of anything that creeps upon the earth, swims in the sea beneath, or flies in the air above. And I was sitting in a church one time, sitting there in the morning service, watching, the preacher talk. And, they go on and on and on. And sometimes you lose your train of thought. I was looking. Whoa! On the front of the podium, there was a fish.
Oh my gosh!
For the symbol, make you fishers of men. It had a fish. I said, whoa. Then I looked up above his head at the big stained glass window, and it had a dove, and he had the olive branch in his mouth. The dove is flying, the bird, I said, whoa. And then I look over here, and there's a cross with a man hanging on it. And I said, wow, they didn't miss a single one. They got them all. Something walking on the earth, something swimming in the sea beneath, something flying.
Stupid.
Okay. Always good fun there, Yusuf Estes.
Yes,
Hope
Yusuf
you enjoyed that.
Estes, is one of their top Islamic apologists. So the best that Islam has to offer, his argument is that Christianity was started in Rome by Alexander the Great, who's a Greek who lived 300 years before Jesus was born.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. I have no idea why he just went. I mean, why did he choose the Roman emperor, for heaven's sake? No. You decided to go with Alexander the Great, a Greek. I guess all the white people look the same to him, all right? All right, I got my presentation up.
Yep. So quick comment from Matt here. He said this is one of the weirdest videos ever. What's even funnier is that this whole thing was in a very response to a very innocent comment. She just mentioned that she was Catholic and asked a question that should have been a very easy question for Yusuf to answer about the Quran. And then he just goes on and on about totally unrelated stuff, eventually going on to Alexander the Great. And his whole 8-10 minute answer, he didn't mention her actual question one time. And it wasn't a hard question. It was a very easy question to answer. So just quite extraordinary. To say one of the weirdest videos ever, I think, is a bit of an understatement. It might literally be the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And that's with all, including every Muslim who's called in here, and the brain dead atheists who call in, and countless people I've spoken to in real life, might be the dumbest thing I have ever seen. All right, I will share your presentation now with that icebreaker out of the way. Now we're going to learn about how Alexander the Great exposes not just Yusuf Estes, but Muhammad as well.
Indeed. So, um, Alexander the Great, who is called dhul-qarnyn in the Quran, and I will prove that in a moment, he is involved in one of the greatest challenges that Muhammad ever faced. And we will discover how Muhammad was challenged. And I want everyone here, whether or not you're Muslim or you're Christian or whatever, to tell me whether or not you think that Muhammad passed the test. Okay? So here's the story. So the story of dhul-qarnyn is found in 1883 to 101, and it's sometimes called Meccan and it's sometimes called Medinan, but most sources agree that they're Meccan. So the Meccans asked the people of the book for material to test Muhammad with, and these verses here about dhul-qarnyn are one of the answers. So this is the text that's up here is from Ibn Ashaq, and it is the story of how this challenge came to be. And make it a little bit bigger so our faces aren't on it. So if you can see words that small, you'll be able to see what it is. So al-Nadir has been going around saying that Muhammad is the ears. Muhammad is the ears. Muhammad is the ears. He's just repeating things. And he would walk around and he'd tell Persian legends and say, look, aren't I as good of a prophet as Muhammad is? All he's doing is repeating stuff that everybody knows about who's educated at all. And so some of the people of Mecca decided to do a test case. And so they sent al-Nadir together with another dude from Mecca to the Jewish rabbis in Medina and said to them, ask about Muhammad, describe him to them and tell them what he says, for they are the first people of the scriptures to have knowledge which we do not possess about the prophets. They carried out their instructions, said the rabbis, you are the people of the Torah, and we have come to you so that you can tell us how to deal with this tribesman of ours. The rabbi said, ask him about 3 things of which we will instruct you. If he gives you the right answer, then he is an authentic prophet. But if he does not, then the man is a rogue. So form your own opinion about him. Here's the first one. Ask him what happened to the young men who disappeared in the ancient days, for they have a marvelous story. Ask him about the mighty traveler who reached the confines of both East and West. Ask him about what the spirit is. This is al-Ruh. If he cannot give you the answer, then follow him. If he can give you the answer, then follow him, for he is a prophet. If he cannot, then he is a forger, and treat him as you will. So the 2 men went away, and they returned to the Quraysh at Mecca and told them that they had a decisive way of dealing with Muhammad. And they told them about the 3 questions. They came to the apostle and called upon him to answer these questions. So what did Muhammad say? Is he agreeing or is he disagreeing to give the answers? He said to them, I will give you your answer tomorrow. So he's agreed to the challenge. He's agreed that if he can't give the answer, he is a fraud. But he did not say, inshallah. He did not say, if God will, right? So they went away, and the apostle, so they say, waited for 15 days without torevelation from God on the matter, nor did Jibril come to him, so that the Mecca began to spread evil reports, saying, Muhammad promised us an answer on the morrow, and today is the 15th day, and we have remained without an answer. This delay caused the apostle great sorrow until Jibril brought him the chapter of the cave, in which he reproaches him for his sadness, and told him the answers of their questions, the youths, the mighty traveler, and the spirit. Now, we notice that Muhammad right away said that I'll give it to you tomorrow, and he doesn't. So we have one failure already. But let's say that this is not... Oh my goodness. Someone triggered it. Good job, guys. It said, so he's already failed the standard that he set, but maybe Allah is just angry because he was tested, right? And so he's not really going to fail. Well, we'll find out whether or not he answers the question, the youths, the mighty travelers, and al-Ruh. So Ibn Kathir talks about 2. He says, we have already mentioned how the disbelievers of Mecca sent word to the prophet of the book and asked him for some information with which they could test the prophet. They, the people of the book, said, ask him about a man who traveled extensively throughout the earth, and about some young men who nobody knows what they did, and about the Ruh. Then Surah Al-Kahf was revealed, and dhul-qarnyn had great power. So this is just talking more about him because it's in the context of the dhul-qarnyn story. Now, Ibn Hisham additionally notes that dhul-qarnayn's name was Alexander and that many great cities were named after him. He does not say that some people think this. He says, no, this is Alexander. Now, here's a modern Islamic website that talks about some more. Here's Muhammad sitting in a cave getting revelation here. So I thought we would enjoy some pictures today. The final story is in relation to dhul-qarnayn.
Pictures are haram.
People tend to like pictures in the chat, right? The final story is about dhul-qarnayn. This story, including the story of the people of the cave, was revealed in response to the efforts by the Jews of Mecca to discredit Rasulullah. Their scholars had knowledge of certain tales known only to the religious elite amongst them, and they challenged Rasulullah by giving him certain key words and asking him to describe these stories in full to prove he was indeed the prophet. Now, this is what anybody would think just reading this. That's what you would think is going on here, right? Not having Jewish or Christian ancestry, these stories were not known to the community of Mecca at the time, and so were not part of their tradition. So the only means of which Rasulullah could have told them the details was if the story was revealed by Allah himself through the angel Jibreel. When asked to describe the instance, he asked the questions to return. He didn't do it. It took 15 days, etc., etc. And this is a trial from Allah. And after that, he said that you need to say inshallah for now on, right? Before you make any commitment.
The breakfast gun wants to know what's wrong with Muhammad's face. I mean, he's got some kind of disease or something there. So I guess we're just going to have to get a different Muhammad's face up here.
Yeah. So it's really funny because it's extremely clear from the ancient sources that everybody could see Muhammad just fine, but they tried to imitate what happened to Moses after Moses saw the face of God and spend all that much time with him in the tabernacle, and then after that he had to wear a veil because his face shone so brightly, and so they pretend that that was Muhammad too, even though we have stories of people coming up to him and going, hey, which one's a prophet? And then no one goes, it's a dude with the shining face over here.
Well, you know, everyone expected him to be a prophet from the time of his birth, and then he gets a revelation. He's completely confused. He doesn't know what's going on. No one else does. Literally no one follows him. Like 10 people in the first dozen years of his prophethood follow him. But, you know, it was obvious to everyone that he was a prophet from the time he was a baby.
What the hell is this? A'udhu billah. We have seen the evidence. You cannot escape anymore. You're finished.
We'll find out whether or not Muhammad has made everyone finished in a second. All right. So, according to the standard Islamic narrative, this is not me saying this. This is how it's set up. This is the framework for these verses. This is a test concerning or for prophets of God. Okay? It contains sacred knowledge. This has to be sacred knowledge. The question was asked by the Jews of Medina, and according to the standard Islamic narrative, Muhammad passed the test by giving correct answers to 3 religious questions. The religious guys concerning the sleepers of Ephesus, Alexander the Great, and al-Ruh. So this has to be a religious topic. Okay, this is not like how many rocks do I have in my sack, Allah can tell you, right? This is stuff that they know because they read the Torah, remember. So this is religious knowledge. So the question is, did Muhammad pass his test even in the standard Islamic narrative? So if he did pass the test, because we're assured that he must have passed the test because he's a true prophet, right? The sources talk about the Jews reacting to him passing the test. Why did only one Jew pre-conquest and that Jew's immediate family ever follow Muhammad if Muhammad was able to pass his test? So These Jews are supposed to be living in Medina according to the standard Islamic narrative because they are expecting a prophet from the Quraysh. Yet, he answers the questions correctly according to the standard Islamic narrative, and yet, oddly, we don't have anyone actually converting to Islam because of it. Another question, why didn't any of the Quraysh who were testing him follow Muhammad right after he gave the right answer if Muhammad had passed the test? This is supposed to be to determine whether or not Muhammad is a true prophet. So if he answers it correctly, follow him, the Jews say. There is no evidence that a single person converted to Islam or followed Muhammad immediately after this. Okay? So here's a question. Are these questions even legitimate or legitimately answered? So I could be trying to trick someone. I can ask them a question. How long does it take the sun to circle the earth? So if you do not, if you don't know that the earth circles the sun, if I ask you, how long does it take the sun to circle the earth? Then what's going to happen? You're going to give me an answer, and no matter what answer you give me, it's going to be wrong because this is not a legitimate question. It's a trick question. Okay? So, again, let's look at these in focus here. Why would the Jews of Medina think that the Christian legend of the sleepers of Ephesus concerned prophets of God or knowledge that only a prophet would have? Would Jews of Medina see the sleepers of Ephesus, this is a Christian legend, as something concerning the prophets of God? Another question, does the story of dhul-qarnyn match something that Jews or Christians believe? Right? The knowledgeable, the elites, do the knowledgeable elites believe the story of dhul-qarnyn? And for the third question, he doesn't actually answer it. So here's the answer that he gives. They ask you about the ruh. Say, the ruh descends by the command of my Lord, but you have only been given a little knowledge.
Convenient.
Yeah, he doesn't answer the question. He is unable to answer that question. So, the one question that we're going to deal with in detail here is that of dhul-qarnyn, and it's probably the one that was the main challenge of the Jews of Medina, and possibly the only one in this context, as we'll see later. So, what's funny is that even some Muslims realized that he failed that third question. So Ibn Ishaq and Ibn Kathir both record the Jews saying that if he can answer 3 questions, he is a true prophet. And if he can't, he's a fraud. He doesn't answer question 3. Therefore, according to the standard Islamic narrative, he is a fraud. Because this is so embarrassing, al-Wahidi introduces a different, or al-Wahidi, I don't know why I called him that, al-Wahidi introduces a different challenge. Without isnad, and here al-Suyuti gives an isnad for this variant, but around it are even more obvious fabrications, which is probably why al-Wahidi is trying to avoid giving an isnad, because that would lead you to the whole thing, and stuff around it is just so ridiculous that you would know that this has got to be made up. But anyway, and in this challenge, the correctness of the answers don't even matter. The only thing that matters is whether or not he tries to answer all the questions, none of the questions, or some of the questions. So the Jews gathered and said to the Quraysh when they asked them about Muhammad and his case, I don't know why the Jews are gathering, but anyway, when they were asked about Muhammad and his case, ask him about the spirit and about the youths who were lost long ago in the past, and about a man who reached the east and west of the earth. If he answers all these questions, he's not a prophet. If he doesn't answer any, he is not a prophet. But if he answers some and refrains from answering some others, he is a true prophet. Like, so at this point, it doesn't even matter what he says. He can be making things up. But this is one of those, how many pebbles are in the bag? Ha ha, he guessed the pebbles in that kind of thing. Very, very funny. So here, and then again, this is just evidence that they realized, even the Muslims realized, that he failed the challenge. So his fury at the Jews after failing this challenge are evident in the next verse about al-Ruh. And if we willed, we would have certainly taken away that which we have revealed to you. And then you would not find against us any wali, except a mercy from your Lord. Very funny. Like nobody's gonna protect you from me if you, because of you're asking this. If we will, you better stop trying to test Muhammad here and embarrassing him. Very funny. So
So
go ahead.
somehow this is what the great Muslim scholar Nur got from your presentation so far, that good is physical pleasure. She says this is the main error that you've made so far in this presentation.
Are you literally mentally incapacitated, or are you not turning the volume on?
I have no idea.
Nor. I'm gonna write turn on the volume or time out. You're not listening.
Definitely.
All right. So
So Breakfast Gun has an important question here, which I think we can just leave as a rhetorical question. So would the people who are asking the questions know the answers and thus be true prophets?
well, not in this particular one. In this particular one explicitly says that they know this because they have the Torah, because they're people of the book. This is something hidden in the Islamic sources, right? So because this is hidden in the Jewish sources, this is something written in the Jewish scripture. And so the Jews know this. And so Muhammad hasn't read the Jewish scripture, so he could only know it if Allah tells him, right? So there are different versions of the challenge that are given. Ibn Kathir just says, ask about the man who has traveled extensively throughout the earth. That's so vague. That's so vague and ridiculous that, like, it's like going, who is really tall? Oh, the answer is a giant of Jack and the Beanstalk, is like the level of question of this. But other sources give a prompt that would actually get the answer, dhul-qarnyn, according to a specific tradition. So one of them, the one who reached the confines of both East and West, another one who al-Suyuti asked about the man who has circumambulated the East and West of the earth. And what was his prophecy? When that particular one, what is his prophecy, is also extremely interesting in the context of what source the story of dhul-qarnyn actually comes from. So again, if this is a legitimate test, then the answer has to be sacred knowledge. It cannot be non-religious knowledge, because the reason the Jews know this is because they're people of the book. Jews and maybe Christians already have this knowledge if they're educated. So this is something with Jews and possibly with Christians, and it cannot be something that Jews don't know about. If the Jews don't know about it, it's not the correct answer, because it's their test, right? It's a knowledge that they have by virtue of reading and reciting the book of Allah. It's specifically because they're people of the book that they know this. So the alternative to this is that the Jews are not asking in good faith and are trying to trick Muhammad into giving a seemingly correct answer that reveals that he's a fraud. So which explain the results better? Well, Breakfast Gun, there is the fact that the Quran actually thinks that the Talmud is also the Torah. So if it's in the Talmud and it matches, it could possibly still be true, but we'll find out what's happening in terms of the Torah as well, right? So what was the answer? Well, the answer is that dhul-qarnyn is a traveler. So he must be, if the standard Islamic narrative is true, he must be a pious monotheistic religious figure, because that's how he's portrayed in this section. He's described using specific events. So whether the sinister or not, Muhammad thought these events must be known to the Jews to be about him. So Muhammad thinks that this is what the Jews know about dhul-qarnyn. If the standard Islamic narrative, these events have a monotheistic religious context. These events have to be previously described in a pre-Islamic book, if sin, the original source has to be a revealed book of Allah. If sin, the Jews believe that these events, because they come from that book of Allah, right? So
All right,
go
so
ahead.
pause there for
Yep.
a second. I missed this from earlier, but I'll bring it up anyway. For Kazan, I blame you for all the brain cells I lost listening to whatever the heck that video was. Of course, referring to Yusuf Estes there. Well, I apologize about your lost brain cells, but hopefully it was worth the laughs to lose those brain cells. And then we have a super chat from Jack Ray.
Can't answer this question in a 20-minute interview, nor is it wise to do so, which is why I never brought this topic up myself. You will not find one lecture of mine about this issue. It should never be brought up in public. And I don't like these idiots, and they are idiots, wallahi. This is not something you discuss amongst the masses, ya akhi. It's not wise. I encourage anybody who is really interested to go deep to take the class. I do this class. It'll be 1 year later.
And that's actually a very appropriate thing. Now, Yasser Qadhi has talked about dhul-qarnyn in public, but he has also said that it's a very dangerous thing to talk about. It's the kind of thing that will lead people out of Islam because none of the standard interpretations remotely work. They all point to the falsity of Islam. So he has his own ridiculous imaginary interpretation of the wall and the people trapped behind it and whatnot that not a single classic scholar would agree with. And he says, well, that's just too bad because I can't believe in any of the nonsense that they usually support. So this is what I have to do to stay Muslim, basically. So very appropriate for him to appear in this. Jack says Mary uses research to play Mary Heck on Mohammedan fables. Thank you for that donation.
Well, that's the thing. You don't have the freedom to find other sources that do not, they have to exist in the context of this challenge of the Jews. So the Jews have to know either what the right answer is or what they're trying to trick him into saying. They have to know one of these things, right? So we're going to start out by talking about the dhikr and the two horns, okay? So if I were Pakistani, I'd be able to say zikr, which is like 1,000 times easier than trying to say dhikr, because that's a ridiculously hard sound. Anyhow, so we're going to go through it verse by verse and see what it means and what other things that fit the criteria of the challenge that Muhammad could possibly be talking about, okay? So it starts out, and they ask you about dhul-qarnyn. And remember, here in the Quran, even if you're Quran only, this is a challenge being issued. They ask you about him. They ask you about dhul-qarnyn, the possessor of the two horns. That's what it means. It says, say, I recite to you a reminder about him. Now, the word reminder here is dhikr, and it's a special term for repeated revelation of Allah. The Quran itself is called a dhikr because it doesn't have anything new, okay? Previous revelation itself was a repeated revelation. That was itself a repeated revelation is also called that because according to the Quran, things are revealed from the book of Allah to people repeated times. So other people have also gotten dhikrs because remember there was a book at the time of Noah, etc., right? So Islam is my identity. Are you paying attention to the presentation? I would like you to engage with the presentation right now because right now we're getting lots of side chat, which is not what we want at the moment because I would really like folks to pay attention, especially Muslims, because I need you to tell me if I'm getting something wrong. I want you to tell me how I'm getting it wrong. Okay, guys? So.
Yep. Yeah. It better be something specific, and you better not come into a stream 2 months from now and be like, why didn't you respond? Because it turns out that's what Nur was talking about. She was talking about some other stream literally 2 months ago and then was upset that we wouldn't stop this stream to respond to whatever she thinks she's talking about from some other stream, with zero context to know what she thinks we're describing as physical pleasure being good. So
al-Dur al-Manthur by al-Suyuti explains that al-Bayhaqi included in Shu'ab, goodness, al-Iman, on the authority of Ibn Abbas, that the Prophet may, etc., said, Surah al-Kahf is called in Torah the barrier that prevents the reciter from hellfire. So this surah is found in the Torah according to al-Bayhaqi and al-Suyuti, right? This is what they mean by a dhikr. We ought to be able to find these same surahs in these books, okay, in other books in the Torah. So
a quick comment here from the questioner. Trust me, Nur is in denial, as when I was a Muslim. These sheikhs have their congregations hypnotized with lies. I read the sources for myself and left Islam. Congratulations on seeing the truth. On the one hand, it's easy, or at least it should be easy. But on the other hand, because Islam's so obviously false, but on the other hand, it is very difficult to accept that what you've always known may be wrong, and it's very much easier to pretend that other people are lying and not put any effort into finding the truth. So I congratulate you on that.
yes, so I want you guys to understand how these Muslims understood what dhikr meant. It meant that they expected to find this same surah in the Torah. So that
and why wouldn't they? Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't they expect that? Because that's exactly what their God promises.
Exactly. Awesome, the questioner. That is wonderful. He says that he's a Christian now and has been for 6 years. Sorry for not saying aloud. All right. So what book does this actually remind people about? I think all of us here know that you cannot find Surah al-Kahf in the Torah, right? Does not exist there. But what does it remind people about?
What?
Now, the ultimate source for all of this stuff is the Alexander romance. It was the best-selling novel of late antiquity. It was like Harry Potter times 100. It's fiction, but it's based off a real person, like the Arthurian legends. I don't say Arthurian legends anymore, or as much, because some people these days don't know what the Arthurian legends were. But Arthurian legends, Song of Roland, these things are based off of real people, but their imagination. They have all sorts of fantastical things. It's all fictional embroidery. They're novels that hold kind of like the what was it? Abraham Lincoln as a vampire killer. It's that level of stuff, and it's very compelling because Alexander the Great was a compelling figure. And there was this enormous body of writing about him to draw from, with all of these mythical and wonderful sources that were really fun to read. It's an enjoyable read. It's fun to read now. So it was so popular that people made lots of recensions, which means that they made different versions of the same basic story. It's also called pseudo-Callisthenes because Callisthenes was a companion of Alexander the Great, and so the first one was like the Alexander romance is like ascribed to him, right? So
real quick, we do have a response from Islam is My Identity. Where is the Torah? Again, yeah. I've told you about this before. Islam is My Identity. You only ever misspell words that are important to Jews and Christians. You're doing it on purpose, and it's quite pathetic. Anyway, where is the Torah which was revealed to Moses? I was unaware there was any different Torah.
So according to al-Suyuti, it's with the Jews right now. It is called in the Torah the barrier that prevents the reciter from hellfire. It's there right now.
Yeah, and Allah doesn't know about any other Torah. No early Muslim knows about any other Torah. Only was hundreds of years later when Muslims got their hands on the Torah and found out that Muhammad didn't know what he was talking about when he said that he was affirming the Torah, that suddenly, that's because the Torah is corrupted. But actually, that's not even true, because usually early Muslims would just say that the Jews are intentionally hiding it from them, that they're putting up a fake book to trick them.
Yeah. Whoops, I meant to hit share and I didn't. If you'll please share my screen again. So Islam as my identity here is a lot smarter than his stupid prophet, because his stupid prophet accidentally affirmed a Torah that the Jews had with them, which is the same Torah that we have now. So they took the Torah, they placed it on a pillow, and Muhammad said, I believe in thee and him who revealed thee. So according to Muhammad, the Torah is the book that is with Jews at the time that he was alive. And according to you, it's not. So I'm glad that you affirm that Muhammad is an idiot and doesn't know what he's talking about. But you are here to rescue your religion by clarifying that Muhammad is too stupid to know what the Torah is. Now, I will not be as mean if you don't stop being disrespectful. If you are disrespectful, I will be disrespectful and I will embarrass you. Stop it.
So Jackson says, wasn't this critique invented in the 10th to 11th century? I wouldn't say necessarily invented. I mean, it's hard to say whether anyone ever said it before then, but it certainly wasn't popular until then or even later, really. Go ahead and get your presentation back up here. And it looks like God Logic just finished up. So welcome all the people coming over from the much more compelling God Logic stream. And, we appreciate it. You putting us as your second choice. And that's fine. I think God Logic's pretty awesome as well. So there you go. And then Big Mahmood somehow can't figure out what the topic is, when all you have to do is read the title or read the description of the video or pay attention for 30 seconds. Good job.
It's fine. He'll catch up eventually. So Islam as my identity now says that I'm stupid, but since he thinks that his prophet's also stupid, I mean, he thinks everybody's stupid, apparently. He's following a dude that he thinks is stupid, right? So the question is, what book does this actually remind people about? So let's find out when this is from. The date of composition is very uncertain because it contains material from this collection of 170 fictional letters that have been circulating before. And the oldest of those that survived, like the physical pieces that we have, because it was really popular in Egypt, we actually have some. And it's from the 2nd century BC, which is crazy early for things to be survived. That shows how insanely popular this is, because we have so little stuff that survives from the 2nd century in actual physical writing. So the Beta recension actually quotes one of these letters at length. It's certainly a composite text from different sources. Some of these things were circulating separately. The dream of Nectanebo and Aristotle's letter and other things were circulating separately as well. There are two basic editions of it, basically, that contain essentially the same events but expressed with the different words and stuff. The Beta and the Alpha. The Latin translation is of the Alpha text, and it's by Julius Valerius, and it's been dated to either 200 to 150 BC or to the Severan period, which is before 221 AD, right? In the period of the Severan emperors in the very early 3rd century, right? So this puts a hard terminus ante quem, and that means that it has to have been written before this date, right? That's what terminus, ending, ante quem, before which, right? So there's also an Armenian translation that was made in the 5th century, which includes part of the Beta recension to fill in gaps. So that means that the Beta recension has to be from the 5th century or earlier. The full early extant Beta examples, where you have physical manuscripts, they have texts that are dated no later than the 6th century. So this is all before Muhammad's prophethood, guys, but that's what you would expect, because this is a test of revealing something that's already written, right? Now, something very important, Alexander is a pagan in the Alexander Romance. His paganism is slightly de-emphasized in later versions. There's still references to specific pagan gods, but one line that was and then he sacrificed to the gods was quietly removed from some of the Beta receptions, right? Because dude was a pagan. These stories were written originally by pagans, but then Christians began circulating them and got a little bit uncomfortable with some of the material and just didn't want to emphasize that quite so much. There are also, so this is about, again, the Alexander romance, alpha and beta versions of it, right? All early. There were spin-offs from this that departed a lot more from this original material. One of them is called the Christian Syriac legend. No, Syriac, what language is it in? It's in Syriac, right?
No, that can't be. It's got to be in pure Arabic.
So, but
Pure Arabic.
that is kind of the point, because it's in Syriac, so that means that the material theoretically would not have been as easily accessible to Muhammad. So you might say that, oh, it takes Jibril to tell him of this, right?
Mhm.
The main event includes material from the Alexander legends, romances and legend, and also from legends that trace back to Josephus or before. And this version must be dated between 515 and 591. I will explain later why. It has been incorrectly dated previously to between 629 and 650. It absolutely cannot be from them, and I will explain why. Then the other spinoff is called the Syriac Metrical Homily, because it's a poem, right? And it was likely composed in the same century, and it turns some of the material that you find in that Syriac legend into a poem, and has some additional material that is also found in the Quran and is not found in the legend. It's also explicitly Christian. So in the first one, the Christian Syriac legend, it turns it turns Alexander the Great into a really good Christian. Well, this one is explicitly Christian. You know, the author is saying this at the beginning. Oh, Jesus, the light who redeemed creation by his crucifixion. Thee are the fiery host eager to praise. With glory and power will I sing unto thee, bowing low in adoration. The fiery cherubim bear thee, O Lord, that's Jesus, O Lord, upon their wings, and the fiery ranks ascribe to thy name all adoration. So this is a Christian writing this, and in this, Alexander is also a Christian. Now, the Syriac metrical homily, this is the poem, right? It can't be the original version of this story, this particular story stream, this version, because it has some oddities in the text that make it clear that it's taking from an original, like you don't quite introduce things in the right order and stuff, because you're making a poem based off of something else. But it's not based on the Syriac legend. There aren't any Huns in it, and Huns are like the center of the Syriac legend, right? Alexander is a proto-Christian in both of these guys. So, you know, Jesus hasn't come yet, but he's still this proto-Christian, okay? The Syriac legend also can't be the original, because the Syriac legend forgets an event where Alexander grabs a bunch of Egyptian smiths, and he still has them with him, and he just like forgets that he has these smiths in the text. So it really shows that they both come from an original text that both alter in different directions. Something that's particularly amusing about the metrical homily is that the Romans don't even appear to be Christian in the text, even though it was probably written in the 6th century. In the base text that it's taking it from, it talks about the fall of Rome. Mighty Rome, from her greatness, he shall throw down to the depth. So the source that they're taking it from appears to be before 380 AD. Although the poem itself was composed in the late 5th century or after, probably the 6th, because it's imitating the form of the metrical homilies of this particular guy named Jacob of Surug, to whom it is sometimes attributed because of its meter. Sometimes it says, after the fashion of Jacob, and then other times it says, written by Jacob, but it's probably just named that because it was imitating his favorite poetry form, right? So if you want to see the translations of all of these, here's your source at the bottom. It's by Budge. It has all 3 of these, okay?
All right, so let me take a couple quick comments from the audience here. From Peter 2 Apologetics, directing this to Big Mahmood, but I would direct this to any Muslim watching. Maybe you can tell us where we're wrong here. How did Alexander the Great end up being a Muslim prophet? Seems that it was because Muhammad was tricked, but if you have a better explanation and you're a Muslim, would love to hear it. And then Andrew said, it's because Alexander was gay like Muhammad. There was a question earlier about what you thought about the theories of Alexander having homosexual tendencies. Uh, I know you're going to be talking more about Alexander later. You want to talk about the text first. So just keep that in mind. But since there was that comment, I thought I would raise that. I'm also going to go ahead and take a super chat. This is the oldest one from Loretta Tubal.
If you frequently say it, Allah would pay off your debts. So you can refer to it back again, inshallah.
We have a super sticker of a high five. And apparently, if you keep talking about this super sticker, Allah will pay off your debts. So just make sure to keep making silly animations, I guess. I don't know. Since it looks like Mary needed to step out of the room for a second, I'll take another super chat from Angel J.
Who ate the apple? You ate the apple. The whole apple. Yes, the whole apple. You ate it. But a small seed, you left it. You put it back into the earth. What happened? Allah, through His power, caused that to grow and to give you how many apples? Thousands.
Always an audience favorite there. Thousands of apples available to you if you just donate to Gufti Manx Ministry. Now, you don't even have to donate anything of value. Just donate your leftovers. He'll gladly take your 3% leftovers or whatever. And, he'll use it for good purposes. And it might be enriching himself, but hey, that's a good purpose, right? Super Chat says, thank you for these lessons as I'm trying to learn more about the occult of Islam and how Christians can and use it to shed light on the ones who are deceived. And when I thanked her for the super chat, she added, you and Mary keep up with spreading the truth and teaching lessons. I am one of the ones who enjoy these. Absolutely. I'm glad that these prove valuable. There were some comments earlier, and no doubt other people were thinking about saying it, like that, I'd rather just have fun in a stream. There's too much information here, but we really appreciate those who like these streams. I mean, they're not for everyone, nor is ever any kind of neither is any kind of stream going to appeal to everyone. So if you like these long, detailed streams, you're in the right place here today. And Clyte ate the whole apple. She didn't even leave the seeds behind. Or he, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, so this is so we actually get the answer to that particular riddle specifically in Aristotle's letter, which also circulated separately. It's found in the Alexander Romance, the Alpha Recension, that earlier one, right? And here is Alexander supposedly writing to our buddy Alexander. Men say of you, Alexander of Macedon has traveled from the setting sun to its rising. He has been welcomed by Ethiopians and by Scythians, men dwelling in deep in the west, and men of the land of the sunrise. And that's in Book 3, Chapter 35 of Alexander Romance, the version Alpha, right? So that is why when you went, oh, who has visited the East and West? That's how he knew the answer, because it's here in this story, right? So Alexander is declaring that I desire greatly to go forth and see the countries, and also what is the condition of lands far away. I will also go forth and see seas and boundaries and all the quarters of the world. So it's the idea of this going to all parts of the world, right? So
real quick, I just wanted to get this message real quick before we got too far away from the clip of Gufti Mink there. That clip is what would happen if Muhammad stole the folk legends about Johnny Appleseed and claimed he was a prophet of Islam. And I think that's such a perfect comment for the combination of that clip with today's subject.
All right. So, Big Mahmoud, are you paying attention here? So, we have, you know why dhul-qarnyn is called dhul-qarnyn? It's because he has horns in the Christian Syriac legend. Here's the text. And King Alexander bowed himself and did reverence, saying, oh, look, he's praying like a Muslim, right? He's bowing, doing reverence, saying, O Lord, King of O God, Lord of kings and judges, thou who settest up kings and destroyest their power, I know in my mind that thou hast exalted me above all kings, and thou hast made me horns upon my head. Horns on my head, wherewith I might thrust down the kingdoms of all the world. Give me power from thy holy heavens, that I may receive strength greater than that of kingdoms over the world, that I may humble them. And I will magnify thy name, O Lord, forever, and thy memorial shall be from everlasting to everlasting. And I will write the name of God in the charter of my kingdom, so that there may be for thee a memorial always. And if the Messiah, who is the Son of God, comes in my days, I and my troops will worship him. Guys, and if he does not come in my days, when I have gone and conquered kings and seized their lands, I will carry his throne, which is this throne, which is a seat of silver, upon which I sit, and I will place it in Jerusalem, that when the Messiah comes from heaven, he may sit upon my kingly throne, for his kingdom lasts forever. So, guys, he has two horns in the Christian Syriac legend, right? So, we have another place in the Christian Syriac legend, and this is a coin that actually has on it horns. And do you know who that is in there? That's Alexander, because after Alexander had died, coins were made for a very long time by his various successors, claiming, oh, we're the legitimate successors of Alexander. See, look, here, we have coins with his picture on it, right? And they would very often put horns on the picture. So, all around the world, they were circulating for a long time these coins that show Alexander with horns on his head. Two horns, one on each side of his head, right? So, yes, apparently Alexander the Great, Alexander the Great here is giving a prophecy. Again, this is a Christian Syriac legend. It was written by a Christian dude who's just trying to legitimize his prophecies that he's making, right? All right. The Lord, and here's another section. The Lord came to Alexander and found him asleep and said to him, rise up from there. And the king arose and knelt down and did reverence to the Lord. Oh, look, he's Muslim. He's bowing like a Muslim, right? And the Lord said to him, behold, I have magnified thee above all kingdoms, and I have made horns of iron to grow on thy head, so thou mayest thrust down the kingdoms of the earth with them, and upon me thou didst rely when thou wentest forth to war and to see the countries. But lo, a multitude of kings and their armies are coming against thee to slay thee. Call upon me, that I may come to thee, aid thee, for I am the Lord, and I help all those who call upon me. So in this particular story, because, they're trying to make him Christian, he is just kind of out doing a tour of the worlds. And then, the Persians come and attack him, so he has to kill the Persian king and become the emperor of the world. Because he's a very good Christian and would not just go to glorify himself and no other reasons, right?
Mm-hmm. And why they're trying to make him a Christian, as you point out, they accidentally made him a Muslim, because we know that true Christians are true Muslims, that they're the same, because all that matters is the position you take with your body when you pray. Nothing else has any relevance to true religion whatsoever. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So again,
we do have a quick question, which I think is very appropriate for what you have up on the screen here. Why did they put horns on his head?
We will get right to that. So here are some images, another coin, because there are tons and tons of coins, and there were probably still coins bopping around at this late date, because people would hoard coins and keep coins for a long time, right? And so the common person would have looked at that and gone, oh, look, it's the horned dude. It's Alexander the Great, right? And then that's a statue specifically of Alexander the Great wearing horns again over here. Now, here's the reason. So, if you know who Amun is, like Amun-Ra was later called, if you know the Amarna period of Egypt, Tutankhamun, Nefertiti, Akhenaten, all of those folks, right? They elevated Amun to not only the high god, but basically to such an extent that you were barely supposed to pay any attention to the other gods. They didn't really deny that they existed. They're just like, well, we should be henotheistic. We should worship this one god, right? And after the period of Akhenaten and so on, the cult had generally decreased in Egypt, except at the oasis of Siwa. I should have looked up how to pronounce that first, but I didn't. So I'm just wildly guessing. Siwa, where he retained the high god status and became depicted with horns. So that's where the horns come from. It comes from this particular god, right, who had horns in this oasis of Siwa, right? And from there, he became known to the Greeks in Cyrene. And Cyrene is like, if you go along the north coast of Africa, you have, I've got to do this backwards because you guys see me backwards. So Egypt's over here, and you go along toward the west, right? And so Siwa is kind of on the border of Egypt and the wastelands and stuff. And then farther along is Cyrene, which is on the coast. So Cyrene is really close to Siwa in terms of whatever part of Egypt it might be close to. It's quite close there. And he became known to the Greeks there as Ammon. And so those horns were then used in this kind of syncretic figure. They went, hey, your high god is Ammon, our high god is Zeus. So Zeus Ammon here is Zeus with horns, and he's our god. He's the god of all the Greeks, like the high god of all the Greeks. So everything's cool. So Professor Yaffel says, I just woke up from a dream with giant reptile and moving mountains. What can it mean? Well, maybe it means that we will be talking about Alexander's fish and the mountains of darkness, because we're going to be getting into that. Possibly not.
See, I thought maybe it was because when a Muslim has sins like a mountain, they'll just be taken off of him and put on a Jew or Christian, even though no bearer of burdens can bear the burdens of another. Because, Muhammad contradicting the Quran, no big deal. No, just follow whichever one you prefer, which is probably Muhammad, because after all, he's the god of Islam. And Allah is just an afterthought.
Yeah, no Christian should ever invite Muslims to pray in churches, because Muslims pray to Satan, and they shouldn't be praying to Satan in churches. All right, so after Alexander the Great conquered Egypt, he made a special trip to the Oracle of Siwa, right? He actually made the special trip to various sites of religious importance to get himself legitimized in various ways, right? Like he would go to this place and do something there to make the people happy about him being their conqueror, and then go to this place and go there, right? Yes, you're clearly a prophet, Yaffel. And so whenever Alexander the Great conquered Egypt, he took a special extra trip to this oracle, because it was particularly of particular importance to Greeks who had contact with Egypt. And the oracle there declared him to be the son of Zeus Ammon, and that he wasn't actually the son of his father Philip, and instead he was half divine, that Zeus had sex with and impregnated his mother, and he adopted kind of the idea that he's this semi-divine folks, right? So here's a description from Alexander Romance, the Alpha Reception, right, that actually describes this. And some of this is actually, this is actual history here, and this is a description of the history in a legend, right? And so this is an explanation for the legendary form of this particular historical event, right? So from there, he crosses over to Libya with a few soldiers. Journeying on, he arrives at the shrine of Ammon. He says Libya, not Egypt. I don't know. It's kind of on the border, but anyway, it's a novel anyway. They're not great on geography, right? Putting his men on the ship, he ordered them to set sail and to wait for him on the island of Pharos. He himself did obeisance to Ammon. Oh, look, he's worshiping like a Muslim again. He's bowing down, right?
That's awesome. And even more so than usual, because now he's bowing down to false pagan god, just like Muslims.
Right, and he's making sacrifices to him, remembering that his mother had said that he was the son of Ammon. So this is actually woven into the earlier part of Alexander Romance. He offered a prayer saying, Father, if my mother spoke the truth, calling me your son, give me an oracle. After these words, he waited a day. Then he lay down in his dreams, and he saw embracing his mother, which I would think would be pretty traumatic myself. But he sees like the god impregnating his mother, right? So he arose from his sleep, and having witnessed the action of the god, he adorned the shrine with the inscription by himself, to his father, the god Ammon, Alexander set this up, right? So Milosh added an addition, Ammon and horns, the funerary altar, which shows, it shows Ammon with horns. And actually on here we have on our little thumbnail that individual is actually not Alexander the Great. It's actually a Zeus, Ammon Zeus with horns, right? So, and then here is, he demanded also to receive an oracle as to where he should found a city bearing his name. And then we have all of this stuff about how you're supposed to build a city. And then he sacrifices to his father Ammon, and he journeys back again, right? So again, the god of the ram's horns. So who is he? See, it doesn't talk about horns here, but here he is the god of the ram's horns, guys. So.
Wad says so he's referring to us worshiping Satan, not him. He says it's not a lie, it's unfortunately the truth. Well, actually what he said is that he can say it. Actually, he didn't say that it is true. It is the truth that you can say it. He said, I could say that your God is Satan. Well, yeah, you can say that, and it's true that you can say that, but sadly for you, you'll find out in Judgment Day, since you're too ignorant and stupid and lazy and pathetic to bother to do any research now, you'll find out on Judgment Day whether you were wise to just blindly place your trust in something that you have zero evidence for.
And then we get an oracle from Zeus about honoring him as the horned king. This is after Alexander had died. This is at the very end of Alexander Romance Alpha. He's dead. And so what shall we do? Some of them want to carry his body here and worship his Mithras. Macedonian said, no Mithras here. We must go, there is here a seat of the oracle of the Babylonian Zeus. Why on earth there's a Zeus in Babylon, whatever. Anyway, so apparently there's Zeus hanging out in Babylon for some reason. I guess it's Marduk in a Zeus hat, or Zeus in a Marduk hat. But he says, take him back and there bear him and lay him to rest, the son of the immortals, and honor him as the horned king. So this is like the last thing that you're supposed to do with Alexander, according to this Alexander Romance. So he's supposed to be honored as the horned king. So I'm not sure what I just said, Clayt, that amused you so much, but sorry. I
worship his what?
Yeah, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I said there. But anyway. So here's what would the correct answer be if this is a legitimate test. Remember, it has to contain sacred knowledge. Jews and Christians have to have this knowledge. Is it looking like Muhammad is passing the test yet? We're going to go back to this page several times. Do you guys think Muhammad passed the test successfully? Or are they not asking a question in good faith and are trying to trick Muhammad into giving a seemingly correct answer to show that he's a fraud? What do you guys think?
Yeah, good
We
question.
absolutely will conclusively debunk the sun setting in the muddy pool verse conclusively. So
before that, since you're I was gonna say, since you're at the end of a section, let me get the super chat from Dr. Whitemeat.
If you want your wealth to increase in this dunya, then give sadaqah more and more. Every single day, 2 angels come down. One of them is making dua for those who give. He says, Ya Allah, give those who give.
I love every stream equally, but I end up rewatching your streams, Thaddeus, to learn, so I stayed watching God Logic's stream. And like I said, I have no problem with people watching God Logic. He's quite entertaining, and I just thanked people for coming over here after. So that was not a veiled complaint or anything. And Super Cat's Paw says, here's an IOU super chat for £5.99. Well, you don't know me anything. I mean, just being here is good enough. And finally, from Nim Grace, Yusuf Estes. He is just too funny.
And it's not open to debate, so there's no point in opening that up. But
Yep, no point opening it up. No debate. He definitely is too funny.
Right.
All right, you can continue on.
So there's a question, how far west of the Nile did Alexander travel in true history? So he actually traveled to Siwa. That was the farthest west point. He made a special trip out to Siwa, unless you talk about his early campaigns up in Thrace, which I think are literally slightly west of that, but not very far west. Or I guess it isn't properly Thrace. I guess it's oh goodness. I'm going blank on the Greek name for the area, but to the east of, or to the west of Thrace. And I'll come up with it later and no one will care. Anyway, so here's the next verse. Indeed, we have established him in the earth and we gave him everything as a means. So he followed a means. Now, establishing is a Quranic keyword. It does not require that that person follows Allah. They may be rebels. They may be people who rebel, right? There are a bunch of verses that you can find this like, oh, these people that I established on the earth and I wipe them away. And then it does imply initial favor, which may then later be revoked. So people can initially have favor and then it gets revoked, right? The word for means literally means a rope in classical Arabic. It has a technical meaning here that he's like given something special and instrumental to aid him in his objective. So perhaps he has his horns that overthrow nations. Maybe that. And the idea of him being established, there were lots of stuff here about how he, he's been given all these things to overthrow the countries, et cetera, and how special he is, right? We've already had that in these sources. So here he is with these super special things given to him by God and by Allah here. So he followed a means until he reached the setting place of the sun, and he found it setting in a spring of dark mud. Now, and the Christian Syriac legend, it's called Syrian by Budge, but then it's called Syriac by most other people, so I'm really inconsistent here. Sorry, guys. Alexander travels to the farthest edge of the world, where he finds the window in which the sun enters, between a fetid sea and the 11th of the bright shining seas. Okay? So, what's meant here by the setting of the sun. And here's Abu Dhar. And we've talked about Abu Dhar before. He's one of my favorite people because he will repeat anything that Muhammad says because he just has no like internal sense of embarrassment. And so we have all kinds of fun things traced back to him. So he's the guy who dressed his slave in the same outfit he did after Muhammad told him not to free slaves. Like, treat slaves well. So he freed a slave, and Muhammad's like, why'd you free that slave? He's like, well, that's what treating him well means. He's like, not like that. Anyway, he's our super little guy who does things and interprets things in funny ways. And he'll do things.
Well, I mean, in that case, there's nothing funny about that. That would just be a logical conclusion to treat your slaves well. But of course, right. Muhammad wouldn't stand for that.
But the fact that he's still like faithfully following Muhammad and just slavishly kind of echoing everything he says in a very literal sense without any sort of sense of his interpretation that anyone else would use and like try to poo-poo things and sweep things under the rug. No, he's going to say it. Do you know where the sun sets? And I replied, Allah and his apostle knows best. And he says, it sets in a spring of warm water. And this particular hadith says warm water rather than a muddy stream or muddy spring. And this caused a whole bunch of debates on whether or not it was mud, if it's setting in mud or if it's setting in warm water, which we'll look at here. So al-Tabari is talking about the text and the semantics. Is it a muddy spring or is it a warm spring? And you notice here that you can't actually tell the difference between the two in terms of like the rasam. And so there's this debate about how you should say things, right? Yeah, that's true. Abu Dhar is not ashamed, and most Muslims today actually are, right? So here are different interpretations. So al-Tabari is talking about what people are saying, right? It means that the sun sets in a spring that contains mud. While a group of readers of Medina and the majority of the people of Kufa read it as a warm spring, meaning that the sun sets in a spring of warm water. But the people of the commentary have differed on the meaning of this depending on the way they read the verse. So here are all the ones who say that it means it sets in a muddy spring. And so again, the meaning is it's setting either in a warm or a muddy spring, one or the other. That's what the meaning is. So here's some folks who say that it's black mud, black mud, black mud. As for the sun, it disappears in mud. Okay? So.
Sorry to randomly laugh here, but Mark Fish says, you got to remember to say enchilada.
Yeah, enchilada.
When you're getting, right, you know, when you say that, I'll do this tomorrow, enchilada. So, or else, you never know what Gabriel's going to do. He might just humiliate you. And that would be so sad if you were humiliated and shown to be a false prophet because you forgot to say a magic word.
Yep. So, Thomas, the Hebrew Qarnyn has absolutely nothing to do with anything that we are talking about today. Like literally nothing. Has nothing and yet you brought to do with Muhammad or nothing to do.
And yet you chose to highlight it and make it part of the stream, whereas I was just going to ignore it.
Yeah. Well, people say very, very silly, right?
Potato Sandwich says, I'll try to catch more streams, enchilada.
Enchilada. Nice. Okay, so here are some more folks who are saying
I might just have to make an enchilada animation after this.
Yep. Right, and here is a great one here. So, who is this guy, Cobb, right? Cobb was asked about, said, you are more knowledgeable in the Quran than I am, but I find it in the book disappearing in black mud. What's going on here? Who is this Cobb guy? This Cobb guy is a Jew of Yemen. And he's saying, I don't know what the Quran says, because you know more about than I do. But he's a total sellout. He immediately converted to Islam because it would get him more stuff. And he's willing to lie about anything. So he's just like, I find it in the book, meaning the Torah, disappearing into black mud. So he is saying right now, guess what? This story is from the Torah, and the sun is disappearing into a black mud there. So it's good, right? All right. So here's some other folks who are talking about mud. So others saying it disappears in hot spring. Now here, listen, here's a very important one. And that means al-Tabari's mind, the correct opinion is to say that they're both popular readings in the land, and each one has a correctness about it and an understandable meaning, and neither contradicts the other, for it is possible that the sun sets in a hot spring that has mud and sludge. So again, he's reading it as literal.
Yeah, and I would agree with him. That would be a valid way to synchronize those two different versions and say that the stream is both hot and muddy. I think that's perfectly valid. But the real point, of course, being that they think that the sun has a literal setting place because that's what their God told them.
Yep. And then here are other places that these are reported. So Nafi is talking to Cobb again, and he says, "You're more knowledgeable. I find it disappearing black mud." Um, and then they went to seek out Cobb to ask him, "Hey, what does it say?" Because this could be read either as mud or warm, depending on how you vocalize it, how you do the vowels, all right? So where does it set? And Cobb is saying, "Hey, in my Torah here, it's setting into black mud," right? So there's another one with more complete isnad, muddy spring, black mud, and I'm not anywhere near out of a material. I'm just out of patience. So here's sources. So later, you guys, I'm going to put this in I'm going to drop it into my my folder where I put the stuff that I put that I've streamed, right? And you guys can check it out. This same person who does analysis shows that. Wait 1 second. It shows that that the rising place of the sun and the setting place, that it must be understood as being actual locations, not directions. Big Mahmoud, you need to pay attention, or you need to leave.
That's actually a different Big Mahmoud. Obviously, same guy, but a different account because I had already hidden the previous account.
Well, I asked you whether or not I unhid him, and I asked you whether or not you meant to hide him because I was just.
Oh no! I hid him. He knows the rules. He is being disobedient, so I hid him.
All right. No.
So Clyde says, "Good point. Jibril should bring me a cheesy gordita." And Una says, "I'll be right back. Inshallah."
Nice. So Al-Dur al-Manthur by Al-Suyuti again is talking about that. So here's some more details. So Muawiyah, remember that this is like the founder of the Umayyad dynasty. He's saying it a certain way. And so Muawiyah asked him, "How do you read it?" And Ibn Abbas said, "I was sent to Ka'ab," again, that's Al-Ahbar, that Yemeni dude, "and I asked to him, where do you find the sun setting in the Torah?" So here's the question that he's answering. Where do you find the sun setting in the Torah? Ka'ab, may God be pleased with him, said to him, "Ask the people of the Arabic," meaning about the correct word in Arabic in the Quran, right? "For they are more knowledgeable about it. As for me, I find that the sun sets in the Torah in water and mud." And he pointed with his hand to the sunset, guys. So he's up here straight up lying about what's in the Torah because he's sucking up to the Muslims. He knows he's lying. He knows it's pretend. But so that's what's going
on. Marian has revealed the scientific miracle that Muhammad could not have possibly known where the sun sets. It would be hot, whether it's water or mud. So obviously, this proves that he's a true prophet because no one knows the sun's hot.
Yep, clearly. So let's find out where the Syriac legend talks about the sun setting. So he's calling all his forces and he's questioning. He says, "This thought has arisen in my mind, and I am wondering what is the extent of the earth, and how high the heavens are, and how many are the countries of my fellow kings, and upon which the heavens are fixed, whether perchance the winds support them, or whether pillars of fire rise up from the interior of the earth and bear them to heaven, so they move not for anything, or whether they depend upon the beck of God and fall not. Now this I desire to go and see." And his men are answering them, and he's saying, "The terrible seas which surround the world will not give thee a passage, because there are 11 bright seas on which the ships of men sail. But beyond these is about 10 miles of dry land, and beyond these 10 miles there is fetid sea, the ocean which surrounds all creation. Men are not able to come near to this fetid sea, and neither can ships sail thereon, and no bird is able to fly over it, for if a bird should attempt to fly over it, it is caught and falls and is suffocated therein. Its waters are like pus, and if men swim therein, they die at once. And the leaves of the trees by its side are all shriveled up by the smell of those waters, as though fire licked them." So Alexander asks whether or not they've seen it. They say yes. He wants to see it himself. There's this long story about going by the way of Sinai in Egypt for some reason, and he picks up 7,000 smiths, which this version of the legend accidentally forgets that he has later on. But he does have these 7,000 smiths because apparently he knows he's going to need them. Then they put ships to sea and they sail over the 4 months and 12 days, and they arrive at the dry land beyond the 11 bright seas. And Alexander and his troops encamped, and he sent and called to him the governor who was in the camp, and he said to them, "Are there any men here who are guilty of death?" He then takes the 37 men deserving of death and makes them march toward the sea while he looks on, where they die instantly. So now Alexander knows he can't go over to this fetid sea because they'll. So he was afraid. He retired. He knew that it was impossible for him to cross over the place where were the ends of the heavens. The whole camp mounted, and Alexander and his troops went up between the fetid sea and the bright sea to the place where the sun enters the window of heaven. For the sun is a servant of the Lord, and neither by night nor by day does he cease from his traveling. The place of the rising is over the sea, and he passes through the midst of the heavens to the place where he enters the window of heaven. And when the sun enters the window of heaven, he straightway bows down and makes obeisance before God his creator. And he travels through the whole night through the heavens, where at length he finds himself where he rises. So we now have sun setting, bowing to God, travels, and finds where he rises. Now, let's talk about that bowing sun again, right? And here's our buddy Abu Dhar, love him to death. He said,
Yeah, but real quickly before you say that, someone from before the chat or before the stream started, I mean, they said that apparently the sun is a Muslim. They said, why are people debating whether Muhammad or Adam or Abraham or whoever was the first Muslim? Because it's clearly the sun, unless the sun was an apostate and then reverted to Islam, since the sun's clearly sentient. And then a little while ago, Jack says, oops, sorry, that's the wrong one. For Cecil says, how can anyone doubt the omnipotent knowledge of a muddy sun?
Right. So yes, if Muhammad is the ear, then Abu Dhar is the mouth. He really is. I love him to death. So the prophet goes and asks him at sunset, "Do you know where the sun goes at the time of sunset?" He says, "Allah and his apostle know better." He says, "It goes, travels till it prostrates itself under the throne and takes permission to rise again, and then it's permitted. And then a time will come when it will be about to prostrate itself, but its prostration will not be accepted, and it will ask for permission to go on its course, but will not be permitted, and will be ordered to return from whence it came, and so the sun will rise in the west." And that's the interpretation of the statement of Allah, and the sun runs its fixed course for a term decreed, etc., etc. But here again, we have him taking from the Syriac Christian legend of Alexander about the sun passing down and bowing to God before rising again. Now,
and before you read that, Milosh pointed out that the sun prostrates on the ground, just like Muslims. So clearly, it's a good Muslim.
Yes, very
Or
clearly.
I should say, he or she. It is not appropriate because it's clearly a sentient being. So it's got to be either he or she. I don't know which. Not assuming it's a gender, but it definitely has one because it's a sentient being in Islam.
Right. So I want you guys to check out why it's black mud. This word for black mud means a stinking mud. If you look in 1526, it says that human beings, that Adam was made from the same mud, the same word, and it is translated in many different translations as a stinking mud, stinking clay, stinky black mud, black smelling mud, mud that's rotted, smelly mud, stinking mud. So it is understood that this black mud is a stinky mud. So that's why it says this. It is the fetid sea. And so it is there's fetid mud in the water in these stories, right? So it is, it's not, oh, look, it's not a fetid sea, it's a muddy spring. No, it's smelly. It's another word for fetid, right? So, yeah, and then other ones call it scum or sludge or other things like that. But I didn't pull those up. But yeah, the idea is it's a gross, sludgy thing at the bottom of the pond.
And I think that the gist of why different stories end up with different things is because, this is one of those pure Arabic words that none of the Arabic speakers knew what it meant because it was a borrowed term, and thus they had to keep guessing what it was supposed to mean.
Right. So In Ibn Ishaq, we actually have even more clarification here. This is a poem ascribed to a king of Yemen. The king of Yemen is talking about dhul-qarnyn. So he left those, this is a pious king of Yemen, right? And left those men as example to the discerning. One of the men whose example is dhul-qarnyn before me was a Muslim. Conquered kings thronged his court. East and west he ruled, yet he sought knowledge true from a learned sage. He saw where the sun sinks from view in a pool of mud and fetid slime. So that's what is understood by this term. Before him, Bilqis, I guess, Bilqis, that's their name for Queen of Sheba. My father's sister ruled them until the hoopoe came to her. Hoopoe is a bird, right? And this has the regular sort of excellent Islamic timeline in which the Queen of Sheba is before dhul-qarnyn, but he is actually supposed to be with Abraham and other sources. And this guy is supposed to be Tuba or Tuba. I don't know how to say his name. Anyway, he's traditionally around like the end of the end of the 4th century AD, and his aunt lived like way over 1,000 years ago. Very excellent there. He's now the nephew of the Queen of Sheba. Very good normal. Grasp of history here.
Perfectly normal for people to live thousands of years in the Quran, at least. A couple quick comments from the audience proposing some new theories. Obviously just humorous comments. Clyde says, if it was a stinking muddy / clay, does that mean the Muslim version of Adam had a stinking attitude? Good question. Suyo said the sun jumps into stinky water just like Muhammad, because nothing can make water unclean. And then Mel pointed out that Muhammad was stinky for 3 days, referring to his dead body rotting as people were waiting for him to resurrect from the dead like he promised he would. So good comments, everyone. Keep them coming.
All right, so we're reminded of our questions again. So does this show that Muhammad is revealing sacred knowledge that Jews have, and that by virtue of reciting the book of Allah, remember that they expect this to be in the Torah, guys. And this Jew's like, yeah, it's totally in the Torah. Ex-Jew who, like, after Yemen was conquered, he was a convert, right? And just like, because he knows that Muhammad's a fraud. He's just lying to them. And they're like, oh, look, this ex-Jew told us this. We totally believe it, right? Or are they trying to trick him? What's more likely? So we are now at our dhul-qarnyn, our jihadi adventure.
All right. So one other comment, which I accidentally brought up earlier from Jack. This is so bad, it sounds like children arguing about what imaginary Pokemon is more powerful. I think that's probably right. That it does sound like a bunch of children arguing over nonsense because, well, that's all you got in Islam. And one other comment from Shavilabi. I like how Allah wants a loan and Muhammad takes the loans from the people. Allah is in business with Muhammad. I would have to agree. And of course, you know, Allah is an immaterial being. Well, maybe not in Islam, but at least in theory, right? At least in theory, he's God and he's immaterial. So, you know, he can't actually take that money. So I guess Muhammad will just have to hang on to it. But don't worry, Allah will repay you with interest, maybe.
All right, so now let's look at the next story, right? Or the next section. He found it that this is the sun, right? He found it near people. That's like an association of folks or kind of a nation kind of thing, right? We said, "Oh, dhul-qarnyn, either thou shalt torment them or treat them with goodness." So do it with these people, whatever you want, right? You can torment them or treat them with goodness. He said, as for the one who wrongs, then soon we will torment him. Then he will be returned to his Lord, and he will torment him with a terrible torment. And this is interpreted, but as for the one who believes and does righteous deeds, then for him is a good recompense, and we will speak to him from our command with ease. And so this is interpreted as being Muhammad killing all the unbelievers who deny Allah and sending them all after death to be tormented some more by Allah, because he's slaughtering anyone who doesn't accept Allah in this random place that he just got with some people. So here's one possibility as to what was meant. Later on, we read in the Christian Syriac legend that Alexander, his troops are in camp, and he sent and called to him the governor who was in the camp and said to him, are there any men guilty of death? They said to him, we have 37 men in bonds who are guilty of death. And the king said to the governor, bring hither those evildoers. And they brought him. Now Alexander thought within himself, if it be true, as they say, that everyone who comes near the fetid sea dies, it is better that those who are guilty of death should die. And when he had gone, they arrived at the shore of the sea, and they died instantly. So here he's actually talking to a governor who already has people who are deserving of death because they've done something horrible, whereas Muhammad or dhul-qarnyn is just going around and going, ha-ha, do you embrace Allah alone? If not, off with your head. So this is one possibility as to the meaning, is it's referring to those who are essentially already found guilty of a capital crime, who are instead getting punished by walking by the water, find out whether or not they die, right? Here's the other possibility. So after he goes and he sees the sun setting, he goes off to the mountains, the Caucasus Mountains, and he said, and then it says, now there was a road across it, by which great merchants entered the inner countries, and by it did Alexander encamp. And he sent heralds of the peace on horseback, and they rode about and proclaimed through the whole country, the king of the Greeks has come to this country, neither slaying nor burning nor destroying. Let every man dwell in peace. Let 300 men advanced in years be chosen, and let them enter my presence, says King Alexander, that I might learn what I require, and let every man dwell in peace. So the other possibility is that it's a reaction that's going, no, he wouldn't come to a place and just be peaceful like this. He will kill all of those who don't accept Allah. So that's the other possibility, that it's like a negative reaction to something that's in the Syriac legend. The Syriac commonly has basically the same thing. He's telling the heralds to go around, I will not slay, nor carry away captive, nor destroy. The Alexander the Great King has come to this land of peace, neither slaying, nor leading away into captivity, nor carrying away to spoil. Let every man dwell in his habitation in peace and without fear. Let the nobles and the aged men of this country go to him, for he has given the word of his mouth, which never lies. Because remember, in these, he's a good Christian, and he's not coming to conquer the whole world. He's just like an early tourist, right? So he is taking his Christian pilgrimage, but into random places now, and it's totally peaceful. So here is an interesting question, right? So if you go, let's find out what the Jews believe, because remember that our circumstances, that our requirements is that he's giving answers that fit with what the Jews said. Now this is the Talmud. The Quran often confuses the Talmud with the Torah, and some Muslims I've found will even say, well, by Torah it just means all the sacred books that the Jews had, so the Talmud counts too. Makes no sense, because the Talmud came at a time when there aren't supposed to be any revelations, but they say, no, it's the faithful oral revelation of God, and it was just written down later, so it's fine. But so let's go ahead and see what the only thing that could be considered a sacred book of the Jews says about Alexander. What do they say about his worship? So Alexander is saying to everybody, to these the Jewish rabbis, who among you is wiser than the others? They said to him, we are all equal in wisdom, as every matter which you say to us, we solve for you unanimously. So we will all give the same answer. He said to them, what is the substance of the stance by which you, the Jewish people, oppose me? Since you are my subjects and my people constitute the majority, you should concede that our lifestyle is superior. So he's just talking about culture. Who's better? Is it this Greek way or is it your way? I've conquered you, so clearly my way's better. They said to him, your dominance is inconsequential, as sometimes even the Satan is victorious by convincing people to act in a manner that is clearly incorrect. So then he says, consequently, due to your insolence, I'm executing you by the edict of kings. They said to him, certainly, the authority is in the hand of the king to execute as you wish, but falsehood is unbecoming to the king, and you have pledged not to harm us. Immediately, Alexander dressed them in garments of purple and placed golden chains upon their necks. So this is a story of these clever rabbis getting the best of Alexander, the pagan, because their way is better than his pagan way. And then again in the Babylonian Talmud, Yoma 69a. So the Samaritans requested that the house of our Lord, that they get the house of our Lord, that means the temple, from Alexander the Macedonian in order to destroy it, and he gave it to them. So people informed the high priest, Simon the Righteous, of what had transpired. What did he do? He donned priestly vestments, wrapped himself in priestly vestments. All the nobles of the Jewish people were with him with torches of fire in their hands. All that night, the representatives of the Jewish people approached from this side, and the armies of Alexander the Samaritans approached from that side until dawn, when they finally saw one another. And there's a story of this interaction and everything else. But it's very clear from here that Alexander is not a faithful follower of Yahweh, right? He's marching on the Jerusalem and the temple in this story. And
But
yeah,
he might be a faithful follower of Allah, because he's waging war against the Jews, which is something Allah really does enjoy.
indeed, indeed.
So a couple quick, I think, excellent observations here. Not Dalula says, keeping a cat is sunnah in Islam. So according to Islam, Prophet Thaddeus is a Muslim.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
That's about the quality of the
potato,
army.
Yep. Potato Sandwich says, Prophet Thaddeus has indeed been given a secure revelation. However, Nina disagrees, because Thaddeus must prostrate when he prays, or he can't be a prophet of Islam. Tough one. Tough one.
All right.
Let me know what you think, chat.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So now we're following our rope to our means again, right? Until he reached the rising place of the sun, and he found it rising on a people for whom we did not make any shelter against it. So he's finding the rising place of the sun, and people have no shelter. Thus and verily, we encompassed what was with him of the knowledge. So let's look at that Syriac legend again. The place of his, that's the sun's rising, is over the sea, and the people who dwell there, when he is about to rise, flee away and hide themselves by the sea, that they be not burnt by his rays. And he passes through the midst of the heavens to the place where he enters the window of heaven, and wherever he passes, there are terrible mountains, and those who dwell in there have caves hollowed out in the rocks. And as soon as they see the sun passing over them, men and birds flee away from before him, and they hide in the caves, for rocks are rent by his blazing heat and fall down, and whether they be men or beasts, as soon as the stones touch them, they are consumed. So we have folks who don't have any shelter from the sun, and they have to hide away inside of caves and stuff by the seas, just like we see here, the people who don't make shelter against it. And the Islamic sources say that these are the Zenj, who are the West Africans. So here we go. West Africans are people who have no shelter and have to hide from the sun during the day, right? So then he followed a means until when he reached between two mountains, which are literally like barriers, he found beside them a people, again, the Qawm, who could scarcely understand a word. Now, this is usually mistranslated because this is really embarrassing because they're about to talk a lot. But here they are. They can't understand speech. They can't understand a word hardly at all, even though they're about to talk a lot. What is this, and why is it there? It seems really odd to me, doesn't it, to you, Thaddeus?
Yeah, just a bit. Just a bit.
But I mean, we have, that early letter. I talked about how there were about 170, maybe more letters that circulated early on and got incorporated. Pieces of them, like the story, got incorporated, and this one's quoted verbatim in the Alexander legend beta recension, right? It's his Alexander's letter to his mom, Olympius, right? Then there appeared to us about 9 or 10 o'clock a man as hairy as a goat. And once again I was startled and disturbed to see such beasts. I thought of capturing the man, for he was ferociously and brazenly barking at us. And I ordered a woman to
Okay,
undress him.
then.
Yeah, he can't speak, he's barking. And I ordered a woman to undress and go to him on the chance that he might be vanquished by lust. But he took the woman and went far away, where in fact he ate her. And he roared and made strange noises with his thick tongue at all our men who had run forth to reach her and set her free. And when his other comrades heard him, countless myriads of them attacked us from the brushes. There were 40,000 of us, so I ordered that the brushes be set afire. And when they saw a fire, they turned and fled, and we pursued them and tied up 400,000 of them, and they died since they refused to eat, and they did not have human reason, but rather barked wildly like dogs. So here we have people who can scarcely understand, in this case, speak a word. So again,
Hey, speaking of people who can barely understand or speak a word, Lorenzo's here, and he says, ignorance of America in Bill Maher commentary, your boy opened himself up like Mary in a death row men's prison shower bending over for soap. What a great comment there, Lorenzo. We are all impressed by your vast intellect. Do have a number of comments on my prophethood, though. Does that mean that Prophet Thaddeus must kiss the black-faced stone? I don't know. In case some watching don't understand the reference, in the previous episode on the black stone, we discussed how the stone is actually a black face stone. It's a white stone wearing black covering. It is nothing racial, no racial here. Just the stone isn't actually black. That's all. Una also said that Prophet Thaddeus split the moon in Chalada. You can find the source in Sahih al-Trust Me, which is my favorite of all the Hadith collections. However, once again, a good counterpoint has been raised here to my prophethood. As Cecil says, only a pimp can be a true prophet of Islam. And I really don't want to be a pimp. So I don't know. My prophethood is kind of still on the fence, I would have to say. Do have a legitimate question from Breakfast Gun, though. Is the dhul-qarnyn story a Meccan or Medina surah?
Okay, so if you go to Tanzil documents that supposedly have the order of revelation, they'll say that it's a Medinan one. But if you go to all the Sirah and all the Tafsir, they'll say it's Meccan. I think the issue comes because the story of the challenge is actually mixing up several different events. I think that the question about Al-Ruh came in Medina and that the other ones were genuinely in Mecca. That's why they're not even in the same surahs. Like the Medinan one is in Surah 17. It's not in 18. So.
And Lorenzo says, we will have our day, Thaddeus. Trust me when I tell you. No idea what that means, but if that's supposed to be some kind of threat, I couldn't possibly be less threatened. However, Marek says, we will have your spot at the mental hospital already reserved when you do. And Perkazan says, does your nurse know you stole her phone again? I don't know.
Nice. All right. So we're following this rope or means again, right? And so here's the folks who could scarcely understand a word. And now they said, so even though they can scarcely understand a word, now suddenly they're talking because he kind of forgot who he's dealing with and confused two stories. Oh, dhul-qarnyn, again, indeed, Yajuj and Majuj are corruptors in the land. So may we make for you a payment that you make between us and them a barrier. So this is a great wall between Yajuj and Majuj, right? He said that in which has established me is better than the payment, right? So I've been established by Allah. Allah is better than a payment. But assist me with strength, and I will make a barrier between you. I will make between you and them a barrier. Bring me iron sheets. Until he had leveled between the two peaks, he said, blow. Until he made it fire, then he said, bring me it, and I will pour over it molten copper or molten brass. So we have some iron, we have some brass, we have Yajuj, we have Majuj, and we have a barrier, right?
Well, good.
Now
No
this is
problems yet.
this is a real place on Earth in which there is a wall being built. So we will find out in just a second. So they were not able to scale it, and they were not able to make any penetration through it. So Yajuj and Majuj can't come through. Now, let's see what Josephus says. This is from the 1st century AD. For Gomer found those whom the Greeks now call Galatians or Gauls, but were then called Gomerites. Magog founded those that were from him called the Magogites, but who are by the Greek called the Scythians. He's actually kind of close. Gomer are the Sumerians, and they are a branch of Indo-Iranians, which are close, that are actually closely related to the Scythians. So it's not, there's nothing about Gauls and Galatians or anything like that. But in the Bible, the actual people are of Gomer are the Sumerians, who are the Scythian horsemen who are terrorizing everybody, right? And that's who they were originally symbolically, but they're used in other senses, okay? So they're used in abstract senses to represent other things, right? They're not literally the Sumerians forever, okay? And by the way, I say Sumerian because I'm like an English speaker, but it's a hard C if you're saying it more like the ancient people did.
So real quick, while you're taking, or while you paused there, Nina said, I wanted to know if the barriers of dhul-qarnyn mix or not. It's
Nice.
a good question. Great reference there, Nina.
So let's look here. Josephus in the Jewish War from the 1st century AD. Now, there was a nation of Alans. The Alans or Alans? I'm not sure, actually, because I only have read it. I've never said it before. These guys mixed with the dudes called the Vandals, so they're real jerk butts. They're really awful. But anyway, here they are. They're the nation of the Alans, which we have formerly mentioned. Some were as being Scythians and inhabiting the lake Meotis. So they are actually related to the Scythians very closely. They're just another tribe up there. This nation, about this time, laid a design of falling upon Media and the parts beyond it in order to plunder them, with which intention they treated with the king of Hyrcania, for he was master of that passage which King Alexander the Great had shut up with iron gates. So we have here Magog being Scythians, who are on the other side of a passage which Alexander had shut up with iron gates. So this is in Josephus's Jewish wars. This king gave them leave to come through them, so they came in upon great multitudes and fell upon the Medes unexpectedly and plundered their country, which they found full of people and replenished with abundance of cattle, while nobody durst make any resistance against them. So this is our earliest reference that we have in writing to the idea that Alexander the Great had made gates, and on the other side of the gates is Magog. Okay? Now let's find the Christian Syriac legend. Alexander said, "This mountain is higher and more terrible than all the mountains which I have seen." The old men, the natives of the country, said to the king, "Yea, by your majesty, my lord the king, neither we nor our fathers have been able to march one step in it, and then do not ascend it either on that side or on this, for it is a boundary which God has set between us and the nations within it." Alexander said, "Who are the nations within it?" The natives of the land said, "They are the Huns." He said to them, "Who are their kings?" The old men said, "Gog and Magog and Nawal, the kings of the sons of Japheth. The Huns go not forth to spoil, except where the anger of God go." And it says that they're Huns later on. The Huns go not forth to spoil, except where the anger of God goes up, that he may slay the fathers and the children, and that the Lord may smite the earth in his anger, for they are fiercer than all the kings in their wars. Now, it actually is true that the historical original Magog folks were the Sumerians, who were Scythian adjacent, right? But here, this legend maker is just assigning them to the Huns, because the Huns had recently, at the time that they wrote, they had come forth. The Attila the Hun terrorized everyone from approximately the same region, right? And the Syriac legend is actually written in such a way that it's basically a prophecy about the end of the world coming when the Huns come back. Okay? So, um, Alexander then said to the natives of that country, have they come forth to spoil in your days? The old man answered them and said to the king, may God establish thy kingdom and thy crown, my lord king. These fortresses, which have been overturned in our lands and in the lands of the Romans, have been overthrown by them. By them have these towers have been uprooted. When they go forth to spoil, they ravage the land of the Romans and of the Persians, and they enter their own territory. Now, the Huns have absolutely no business being in this area at the time of Alexander the Great. And the idea that they were Romans and Persians were decimated before the 300s BC is just ridiculous. This is where this map here shows where the Romans were before the 300s BC. They're nowhere near anywhere Huns were at this time, right? And the Greeks likewise were in no way decimated by these folks, right? Alexander then asked, do you desire that we should do something wonderful in the land? They said to him, as thy majesty commands, we will do. The king said, let us make a gate of brass and close up this breach. His troops said, as thy majesty commands, we will do. And Alexander commanded and fetched 3,000 smiths. Yeah, he forgot that he already had 7,000 smiths. So he goes and fetches 3,000. But this is why it's very clear that this is taken from a different original source that's even older, right? So because he forgot about his 7,000 smiths that he already had with him. But anyway, fetch 3,000 smiths, workers in iron, 3,000 men workers in brass, and they put down brass and iron and kneaded it as a man needs when he works clay. Then they brought it and made a gate, the length of which was 12 cubits and the breadth 8 cubits. And the king Alexander fetched an engraver and inscribed on the grate. Now this is Alexander's prophecy, and this is particularly interesting because remember, one of these versions of the challenge was that the Jews asked him, and what was his prophecy? That would make him a prophet of Islam, right? If he gave a prophecy of the future. Indubitably, he had to be a prophet of Islam if he's giving prophecy. But here is the only time he ever gives a prophecy is in this Christian Syriac legend. It isn't in any of the other versions, right? And again, this is from the 6th century before Muhammad's talking in the 7th century. This has to be something that he's familiar with or he fails the test, right? The king Alexander fetched an engraver and inscribed upon the grate. Here's the first prophecy. The Huns shall go forth and conquer all the countries of the Romans and the Persians and shall cast arrows and shall return to their own land. So that first prophecy is a prophecy of Attila the Hun. Up here is a map showing how far Attila got into the Romano-Greek world. It was quite far and terrified everybody, and they were absolutely horrific, right? Then here's the second prophecy. And at the conclusion of 626 years, very specific here, the Hun shall go forth by the narrow way, which goes forth opposite Halorus, whence the Tigris goes forth like a stream, which turns the mill, and they shall take captive the nations, and shall cut off the roads, and shall make the earth tremble by their going forth. Okay, so here's the second prophecy. It is, it's after 826 years, it's 826 years from the time that he's writing, right? If you say that it's about 330 BC, you end up with a wonky date. But if you're taking Seleucid dates instead of from Alexander's reign, understanding that this is a Syriac legend written in an era where people had Seleucid dates, right? You would actually end up with AD 115 or AD 114. Well, the Huns raided Persia in 503, and then Armenia, Cappadocia, and Laconia in 515. So the area in which this is being written was raided in 515, when this prophecy would have occurred according to the Seleucid dates, right? So the Christian Syriac legend has to have been composed after 515 because Alexander, not a Christian, not a prophet, not making predictions that are correct only if you take a slightly wrong dating system, right?
But the Catholic Church was founded 300 years before the birth of Jesus, so he very well could have been a Catholic Christian, right?
Yeah, something like that. So he's now they're taking captive the nations, cutting off the roads, et cetera, awful things happening. Then it says, and then in the homily, oh, do I have 3?
That's okay. I'm going to take a couple comments while you get your orientation there. So Furin Kazan said, "Oh no, you guys are being vulgarly ranted at by a crazy person. Are you going to take the Shahada now?"
What happens is that some involuntary excrement comes out of your orifice.
And no, I will not be taking the Shahada. And Not Delulu says, "I think Muslims can't take the fact that a woman is exposing what they believe in." Specifically, Lorenzo, the crazy crackpot who has said about 4 or 5 times now that he is leaving after this comment, and then a couple minutes later, he leaves another one. I think that maybe someone needs to help the old man cross the street or something. He can't seem to find his way on his own, and I'm really concerned about him. He's just stuck here against his will, leaving more and more comments because he can't figure out how to open the door and leave. So it's just really sad. I'm so sorry. So sorry about that. And a slightly more serious comment from Not Delulu. Lorenzo might end up burning out like Safraz Hussein. I haven't seen Safraz for a few months now. I think he's been refuted so much, he's probably gone. So I think he's probably gone from online chat based on the fact that he keeps emailing me. I keep goading him into coming back on and embarrassing Islam more. And he just keeps saying like, why would I talk to a pagan demon like yourself? I'm not afraid of you. That's why I'm only emailing you and not talking anymore. I totally believe in Islam. It's the best religion in the world. You're going to burn in hell. So, pray for Safraz. He's definitely struggling, but he's still holding on to it for now. As far as Lorenzo goes, I think that he's been doing this for 20 years, literally standing on a street corner, screaming at people in New York City. I think that he is 100% in control of demons. I'm not saying that to be mean or joking. I think that is absolutely the reality of the situation, and he needs miraculous help. But Safraz, I think he can be reached, and I would encourage you to pray for him.
All right, and we're just going to get to the end of the section, and that will be it for today, and we will pick up tomorrow, and we are over halfway done with all of my stuff.
Well, not tomorrow, next week.
Not tomorrow, not next week. Next time, next occurrence, the next day that I do this, all right? All right, so in the Syriac homily, we have kind of the beginning of the same thing, but we don't have the prophecy there. There are no Huns whatsoever. So, Lorenzo, you're saying obscene things because you're disgusting like a prophet. So you just need to go away. You do not love God. You hate God. You despise God. You spit upon God with every moment that you have. All right? So.
I doubt that he heard anything we said. This is just completely coincidental. Him talking about demonic presence, completely coincidental, because there's no way he's listening to this stream.
Oh, he's a coward. He will not listen. Lorenzo, you are a pathetic coward. Tell me if you are listening, because I know you are too scared. Got it? Okay. Now, we have the Syriac homily here that says where the same thing basically happens. Look, see a wonder, this mountain which God has says a great boundary. King Alexander, the son of Philip, says, how far is the extent of this mountain? The old men say beyond India, it extends, etc., 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 goes to the ends of the earth. Who are the kings and the terrible peoples that are beyond this mountain? The old men say, listen, O master and king, we will tell thee, behold, the family of Agag and the family of Magog are beyond us, terrible of aspect, capable of forms, of all heights. The stature of each of them is from 6 to 7 cubits. Where the wrath of the Lord rises, he sends them, and they overturn the land and uproot mountains and devour men. So again, we have Gog and Magog, or Yajuj and Majuj, which all Muslim sources agree are Gog and Magog, guys. This is not at all like surprising or anything. So the Syriac homily continues that he has a mind to make a great gate. He looked at the mountain which encircled the whole world, etc., etc. And then he says, where have they come from? They show him the place in the middle of the mountain, the narrow pass that was constructed by God. And he looks at it to see if he can make there a door. And so God has now motivated him to build this wall, this gate. And now we get another picture again, right? This is a picture from an Islamic source. You might notice the drawing style, right? They courageously took pains and made a door against Agag and the family of Magog. So now we have our gate there, and he bound them inside. He took iron and brass, again, same substances, iron and brass, great quantity and made it ready for the making of a door that he might shut it in the face of the people. He gave his commands to 12,000 skilled ready workmen whom the king of Egypt had given him from his dominion. Look, they remember that he still had these smiths, even though the other guy forgot. He, the wise man, called the
Hey,
workmen.
well, that's what happens when you combine two sources and you go back to the original, then it makes sense again, right?
Yeah, well, like they both had this original, and then they were both kind of rewriting it, and one guy forgot that detail from
One was a
the other one
little
remembered.
less skilled at what he was doing than the other.
Right.
Cecil says, Mary, I truly appreciate your enthusiasm displayed in reading these comic books. And I want to ask you, are these comic books more pleasant to read than the Quran?
They are, because they tell a fun story. Like, seriously, these ancient sources are a good read. They're fun. They have these incidents and these confrontations and these cool things and this other stuff. It's really interesting. Much better reading than the Quran, which you have to go to a different source, figure out what he's talking about. It's just incoherent, right? Anyway, he taught them how to make it.
Well, real quick before you read any further, Lorenzo says, I had to laugh at this, and you'll see why. To all you brain dead idiots, deal with me on the comment section when this bull is over. Let's see how well or easily you get liquidated. That's if you show up. So I was unaware that human beings could be liquidated. I didn't know we were assets that could be sold in a fire sale after you declare bankruptcy. So good to know. Good to know that Lorenzo plans to liquidate us. Not sure what he was going for there, but brain dead idiots, yeah.
Yeah, he's terrified. He is absolutely terrified of me. Okay, so here's the next part. So this is a mercy from the Lord, and I have rahmatan to show that it is actually the Rahman, which isn't even an Arabic word, it's a borrowed word. But anyway, this is a mercy in another language from my Lord. But when the promise of my Lord comes, he will make it crushed flat. And the promise of my Lord is true. And we will leave some of them on that day to surge over others. And the doohickey will be blown in, and we will assemble them in assembly. Now, the reason why I say the doohickey will be blown in is because the word is sur in Arabic. That word does not mean trumpet. Muhammad didn't know that it was a trumpet that's being blown in. So he used a word that's like a word for something that's fashioned by someone, something that's made. Doohickey is the same thing. A doohickey is something that's made by human beings, but you don't really know the word for it. So it's the doohickey that will be blown in. Muhammad did not know it was a trumpet. He did not use the Arabic word for a trumpet because he didn't even know what the word is. Very excellent. So
Hey, I mean, trumpets, those are pretty rare. I mean, who's going to know anything about those?
Yeah, he probably heard the language he probably heard the word in a different language that he didn't know that well. And so he didn't know what it was he knew that there was blowing, but didn't know what it was. So he was just like, the thingamaduchy, the doohickey. Like, hand me that doohickey, kid. Like, that would be a word that you would use. Hey, hand me that thingamabob. You would say sur. And a surah is a fashioned thing, but it's feminine, right? So sur is a masculine. So
Houston Mueller
excellent
says,
knowledge of the end of the world, because that day is a reference to the end of the world. So here we say that at the end of the world, this particular wall is going to be crushed flat, and the last doohickey will be blown in, and that's what will happen. So, and we will display hell on that day to the kafirun on display. So those who are the rejectors of Allah will get hell displayed on display. Excellent explanation here, right? So, so now we have the equivalent. The reason why the third prophecy hadn't appeared yet is because it has to do with the end of days. So I had moved it to here. Now I remember. I'm like, what happened to the third prophecy? Here it is. So here's the third prophecy. And again, I have written and made known and prophesied that it shall come to pass at the conclusion of 940 years, another king, when the world shall come to the end by the command of God, the ruler of creation. So the world has to come to the end here, according to this Syriac legend. Created things shall anger God, and sin shall increase, and wrath shall reign, and the sins of mankind shall mount up and cover heavens, and the Lord will stir up his anger, and the kingdoms that lie within this gate. For when the Lord seeks to slay man, he will send men against men, and they destroy one another. So here's prophecy 3. 940 would be 611 AD if from 330 BC, or it would be 617 AD if from 503. But if you're using the Seleucid dating scheme, it would be 629. So this is obviously a false prophecy because the world didn't end. But 611 is close enough to 610 that this could make Muhammad the leader of the evil barbarians who initiate the end of the world. I just thought that this was funny. I don't think it's a prophecy, but I think it's funny. Muhammad is the one who brings about the end of the world because he has his prophecy beginning then. That's when the Wahi is supposed to come down, right?
So
no, it absolutely was not, Leandro. We have already shown.
Nope. Alonzo Harris.
Oh, Alonzo
There's
Harris.
no one named Leandro here. This is Alonzo Harris.
Pathetic.
He says the Syriac legend is written after the Quran. He's been here for like an hour, and it took him all that time to come up with this reply, which has nothing to do with anything. You've demonstrated extensively that there are many sources written over a long period of time, all drawing on one another, and yet somehow the Quran has nothing to do with any of these sources that predate it.
Here's the thing.
Or any of the sources that come after it, right? Because there are sources about Alexander that teach all the same stories that come after the Quran. Somehow none of this is at all related. It's all just, those are all one thing in the Quran, something completely different. And it's yeah, sure, you just tuned in, you lying piece of shit.
It is, remember, it is a challenge. If this did not exist until after the Quran, then Muhammad failed the challenge because he is not bringing up things that the Jews already knew. It is a failure. So, according to Lorenzo here, he failed. He's an idiot. He's a failure. Muhammad didn't know what he was talking about. He was unable to correctly identify things to confirm that he was able to produce miraculously what the Jews already knew. If you do not bring me the source that he is talking about that pre-existed this declaration of Muhammad, then he fails the test, boys and girls. So let's look at this, the Syriac legend about, it continues about what's all going to happen. That the 24 kingdoms will come that are written in the book. They'll come from the ends of the heavens and they'll fall upon one another, and the earth will melt through the blood and dung of men. The kingdoms of the Greeks shall move itself, and the iron of come and take the hammer of iron in the right hand and the hammer of brass in the left hand. So end of the world, terrible. So again, and remember, it's the kings, it's the Huns. The Huns will gone forth. When the Huns have gone forth, each time it's the Huns, in the Syriac legend, it has to be the Huns. It's no longer the Scythians, right? Which is actually connected to Magog. It's the Huns who are in no way connected to Magog. When the Huns have gone forth, the kingdom of the Huns and the Persians of the Arabs, they're all going to come and fight with each other. And then, after that, the kingdom of the Greeks shall move itself and shall come and take the hammer of iron and will win. Okay? So, what have we got? We've got Huns coming out to fight the Persians and the Arabs, and then the Greeks triumphing in the end over them all. And the kingdoms of the Huns and the Persians shall be desolated, one by the other. Only a few of them shall escape, and what remains of the kingdom of the Romans, the kingdom of the Romans shall destroy. And my kingdom, which is called that of the house of Alexander and the son of the Philip of Macedon, shall go forth and destroy the earth, and the ends of the heavens, and there shall not be found any among the nations and tongues who dwell in the world that shall stand before the kingdom of the Romans. So he is now suddenly the king of his, he's saying that my kingdom is going to be Byzantium, which is Rome and Greece together, right? Lo, I, Alexander, have written and known these things in my own handwriting, and verily I have not lied in what I have written. Sounds a lot like Muhammad here. But perhaps the nations of the world will not believe what I have written will come to pass. But if ye have not received my word, receive that of Jeremiah the prophet, who long ago pointed out that the kingdom and this kingdom of this prophecy, and spake thus in his book, evil shall be opened from the north upon the inhabitants of the land. So here is why you cannot date the Syriac Christian legend to the 7th century. Some scholars stupidly tried to date this to 629 or 650 after Heraclius was defeated, after he defeated the Sicilians, and they connected that to the third prophecy of Byzantium conquering the world. Oh wait, that is so if you take the Seleucid dating, you get 940 years at 629, but that's not possible. The third prophecy pivots on the Huns and their allies first invading through and then fighting the Persians and the Arabs. But Armenia was mostly the area in the Caucasus Mountains. All of that was mostly under Roman control after 591. So it's not in Persian control at this time. And there's nothing about it being taken over by the Romans at any point. And then it will be taken over by the Persians again. And then they will come, and then they will come, right? The issue is that this is about the Huns. Where are the Huns in the 7th century? They are literally nowhere. No one cares about the Huns anymore. They're long gone. It's never happened. So the Sasanians did take over Armenia from 611 to 624. No one expected the Huns to be a threat then. The Avars and Khazars were like the big names in town. The Syriac legend hasn't heard of either one of them. So if the Syriac legend is written in the context of the 7th century, it should have said the Huns will come, and then their descendants, the Avars and Khazars, will come, that they'll come. The Huns are gone. They're a different group. They speak a totally different language. They're totally unrelated. And the Huns are also the enemies of the Roman, while the Khazars were their allies. Yes, the Khazars invaded, but they were their allies. Now, the Caspian Gates at Durban fell to the Khazars in 626. So if they had gotten, that should be 515, if they had gotten 515 right, why would they be off by 3 years on the more recent date if it was referring to the Caspian dates at Durban? Well, and of course, it absolutely can't be after the Arabs conquered those areas either. It makes no sense at all. So that means that the form of the legend has to be from the 6th century, from before the Romans took over Armenia, where they expected to continue in Persian control until the Huns come again, and then the Romans will take over and usher in 1,000-year reign of Christ. That's what's being said here, right? So why is there this prophecy of 940 years if it isn't really meaningful? Why is there a third date at all? Well, the homily will let us know why there is, because remember, they come from the same source. So first we have to know where these Caspian Gates are. Where was he supposed
okay,
to
so I've been waiting for a long time for you to take a breath,
Sorry.
and you haven't. Because I had to read this hilarious comment, and it just keeps going on and on. So Mel said, Lorenzo, do you have a blow-up Aisha doll? And the reason that this is so funny is because Lorenzo said, see you after this when I blow up this blow-up doll as per the regular.
That's funny. All right. So
all right, I will let you finish now.
Right.
But you got to take some pauses so I can read hilarious comments. Come on.
We're kind of on a roll on this one. So we're figuring out whether or not this can possibly refer to a different group of people on the wrong date invading. They are invading from the north, but they're a different group of people, and they're evading in the wrong date. Can it refer to them? Well, are they even in the correct place? Now, there are 3 places in history that are called the Caspian Gates. First one are the Caspian Gates proper. They're a set of defiles between Media and Parthia, beginning about 50 miles southeast of a particular area cleaving Mount, and they cleave Mount Caspius, which is a range that projects from the Taurus Elbrus Mountains, right? It got its name from the Caspii, a tribe living to the east, not the Caspian Sea. This is the source of the confusion, is that they were called the Caspian Gates, but they're between Media and Parthia. They're way out to the east. They're nowhere near the Caspian Sea. They're nowhere near the Caucasus Mountains. So because people didn't know what Caspian Gates, that it referred to this area here, and that they thought, they then assigned them to this pass of Dariel through central Caucasus. So no, not by the Caspian Sea. It's not by the Caspian Sea. That's the issue, because you read Caspian Gates, you're like, it's by the Caspian Sea. It's not. So then people start like getting confused, and they're like, well, maybe it's this pass of Dariel. And then, so throughout history, from the 1st century AD, in Nero's time, Nero appears to be the first person, Nero and Josephus at the same time. At that time, people had gotten confused and thought that it was the pass of Dariel there. So they're like, oh, it's this pass of Dariel, and that's what meant by Caspian Gates. And at the same time, the legend that there was a fortification emerged, so did this new location. In the original sources about the actual historical sources about Alexander, he marched through the Caspian Gates, but there are no actual gates. It's just the name of a pass. And then later, they reassign it to a different place in the mountains. And then they say that he built gates there, right? Then the Khazars come through, not through the place that everyone thought was the Caspian Gates during all that time, but instead they come through the Pass of Derbend. And that's at the eastern end of the Caucasus and the Caspian Sea. And after that happens, some people sometimes reassign the Caspian Gates to that area, but that's still a minority view. It's late, and it's a minority view. And it is mainly made by people who don't live there or didn't read the original Alexander material of this time. Because the original Alexander material describes how the gates are constructed and stuff. And it kind of matches the Pass of Dariel because this material was written with that place in mind, but it cannot possibly match the Pass of Derbend. So if you either haven't read the original material or you don't live in that area, so you don't know what it's actually like, you might think that. So the Muslims picked Derbend as dhul-qarnyn's gates, even though there was nothing bronze there, right? There was a fortifications there. They're made of stone like all the other fortifications. They noted, hey, look, this construction is Sasanian. And they said, well, those kings must have built on Alexander's foundations. Well, that is not at all possible with what dhul-qarnyn is supposed to be. You know, he's supposed to have built this miraculous thing that no one could come through. And so the Muslims going, yeah, the stone stuff that was I guess it was rebuilt by somebody else, and maybe it fell and got rebuilt. That's absolutely insane, right? So there's an article called Alexander at the Caspian Gates that shows conclusively that anyone who was writing earlier on would think that the Pass of Dariel was that pass. So then the people who are trying to assign it to a late date are now having them come through the wrong place as well. So here's Dariel Pass. You can see how this could have possibly been something that someone built a wall completely across and closed off between two mountains, right? Mm-hmm. Now here is Derbend, and on one side you get a fortress, and you have this big wide space. And if you see down there to the right, that little bit of wall, it actually continues on to the Caspian Sea to kind of close it off. That is not a gate between two mountains. This is. So when they were talking about a gate between, anyone who knows the location and knows what the early sources describe, if you know both of those things, if you've seen these places or have some close association with them, and you know what the early sources describe, because they describe the length and the width and the depth, and I left out all of this elaborate explanation of how big it is. No, that it can only be at this Dariel Pass. It can't be this low, enormous thing, right?
However, counterpoint from unapologetic apologetics, the wall which holds back the Juj and Majuj is made of flex tape, therefore they can never escape.
Right. So here's something that's particularly interesting as a possibility. Muhammad might have heard that the Khazars had entered through the north somewhere, thinking that it's through the Caspian gates, even though they came through Derbent. And Abu Huraira became a Muslim in 926. And suddenly, Abu Huraira hears Allah's apostle saying, "Today the wall of Gog and Magog has been opened so much." And he showed a figure that it's opened this big and they're about to come through. So he may have actually heard of the folks invading from the north and thought it could only happen through the gates of Alexander the Great. And this one is just a silly Islamic video that's extremely funny, trying to assign it to other places. And it made me giggle, so I had to add it. So you now have an Islamic thumbnail video. So again, you have to have the sacred knowledge. The Jews and Christians already have to have this knowledge. So if you are claiming that this has not been written yet, you're saying that Muhammad is a fraud and is not producing the right thing. But it has to come from the book of Allah, and it does not have a source that is sacred. What at all? Not even a little bit. So the Jews are not asking this question in good faith as your alternative. What do you guys think? Do you think Muhammad is passing this test or he's failing it? So,
yep, I think he's gonna definitely fail. Definitely fail.
So we have kind of the same. So now we need to figure out why the heck there's this 940 number anyway. Why is there this extra thing? Well, we can tell that if we go to the Syriac homily, because there they have this in the 7,000th year, lots of bad stuff is going to happen. It's going to be the end of the world. So that's probably what the original source that both the Syriac legend and the Syriac homily came from. So there's what the Syriac legend is doing is saying that no, this last time that the Huns came, that's not the end of the world. What's going to be the end of the world is when they come again. And so instead of 7,000 years, and that 7,000 years date has to do with some popular eschatology. It wasn't like official church belief or anything, but dating back from Judaism. There was this popular eschatology that that the Messiah is going to come in the 6th day and then is going to reign for 1,000 years, and the world will come to an end after 1,000 years. So the return of, and then after Jesus came and he died, they thought that the return of Christ would come then before, like around 6,000, and then there's going to be the 1,000-year reign of Christ and then the destruction of the world, because they thought that maybe creation recapitulated the days of creation. That's what's going on there. And if you just straight up took 7,000 years, depending on who's counting, it might be in the 1400s or the 1500s. Well, it's likely that when the Huns came again, people were thinking, oh, this is the return of Christ, that this is where the Christ is going to come back and reign for 1,000 years right now. But the Syriac legend seems to be trying to chop off 1,000 years, but then had enough buffer in there that it wasn't a date that had already passed, essentially. So it's basically saying the Huns are not the end of the world, but the end of the world is going to come kind of in the same way, essentially. So that is what this seems to be doing, because it does need to affirm that the end of the world will come through that, because that's what the original source said, but they needed to do some manipulation to make their prophecy about the Huns happen. So then the Syriac homily talks about Christ overthrowing the Antichrist, and everything's destroyed. And this one does not have a 1,000-year reign. But remember, the Syriac legend is actually having Rome initiate the 1,000-year reign of Christ. the Syriac homily is just saying, no, this is the end of the world. So that's what's playing here. So that is the end of our section today.
Yay!
So
yay, we survived. We survived.
we made it through. Lots of information.
So I will open up the chat, preferably for Muslim responses, but I don't have my hopes up. But we'll see. We'll see. Maybe we'll be surprised, and someone will come up and defend their prophet and his amazing knowledge about these things which only a true prophet could know, as we are told, right?
Yep.
So it is an interesting thing for them to say, as was pointed out earlier, but that two possibilities, right? Either they don't know these things, and therefore how could they possibly know if the right answer is being given, or they do know them, and thus it's not really a test of a true prophet at all. Now, is it?
Well, it's a test because the people who know these things are the Jews. So it's not a test of any true prophet, right? It's not like the silly one that was given by the one Jewish convert to Islam before Muhammad died, right? It's not that kind of test. It's a test of secret knowledge that the Jews have. So the Jews have to know the answer. So, but Muhammad...
Well, that might be the theory, but why in the world would the Jews have the knowledge of a Christian legend, right? So...
Well, here's the story. The story is that they said, al-Nader was saying, hey, this stuff is just made up. It's pretend. He doesn't have any knowledge of anything. So the Meccans said, hey, we'll take you to the Jews and have those Jews ask him something that they know, but none of us here know about. We're all ignorant of that. And if Muhammad gives the correct answer and the Jews confirm that it's correct, then he passes the test. So it's knowledge that is hidden in the books of the Jews that supposedly Muhammad wouldn't know about. But rather than doing that, rather than giving something that's in the Torah, because the Jews realized it was silly. Like somebody could have told him something, right? He could find out. So rather than doing a legitimate test of whether or not he could find out a piece of knowledge about somebody at some point in the Torah, instead, what they did is they set a trap for him. And because they were very clever, he fell right into that trap. That's what really happened.
So Morek says, I thought another Jew asked him about what the first meal in Jannah was, and he said cod liver oil.
Yeah, that's the fake challenge that only prophets know the answer to this, which is ridiculous because he shouldn't know the answer to any of it. These questions are, the Jews know this because they have it. They have the Torah. Because they have the Torah, they know this. And they did have stuff written in the Talmud, which the Quran confuses with the Torah, but guess what it doesn't do? It doesn't agree with what the story of the legend. They tricked him into giving a legend, because when they came to him, they're like, we think he's just repeating stories that are legendary. And so what happened then is that they tried to trick him into just giving stories that are legendary. It was extremely clever, and he absolutely bombed.
A couple comments here. Breakfast Gun says, I was leaning to this being an anachronistic story that Muslims made up to give legitimacy to Muhammad, but Mary's explanation convinced me otherwise. And I'll just add my thoughts here, that this particular story is one of the things that I find really hard to explain on legendary development, that they're proposing this story that makes Muhammad look bad as an explanation for what's in the Quran, and it fits perfectly. Like the obvious implication that Muhammad is a fraud and was making this stuff up and had to ask around to try to get the details and made up an excuse as to why he couldn't get it right away. That all fits perfectly, which I don't see how someone would get that from like reading the Quran and then imagine that story. Doesn't seem very plausible to me.
Yeah, I think it is so spectacularly clear that he failed because remember, these early Muslims believe that this story is in the Torah. That's why they're running. That's why they're running off to ask this guy Cobb, right? They're asking him, "Hey, former Jew, what does it say in the Torah about this?" And he goes, "Oh, it says a muddy spring." Like they, this is a true person who lived. This is proof that Muhammad is a real person and that he lived and he spectacularly failed. But there's actually a wonderful twist. We can actually tell what really happened in context of this challenge and why specifically it was issued, because it's even better than what you guys think right now. So much better. So, do we have
I
anybody
tried
who
to.
wants to talk to us? Any Muslim who is
Well, I do
not
have a number of comments to read, so they will have an opportunity. Potato Sandwich says, remember, guys, don't forget to say enchilada or enchilada, whichever. They both work. Um, but on this point, I did actually try to ask Robert Spencer, since he pushes the idea that Muhammad is totally legendary, has nothing to do with historical reality, how he would respond to embarrassing material, and he brushed it aside, saying it wasn't embarrassing to the original audience. No doubt thinking that I meant something like, Aisha, for example. And that's not what I meant at all. And then I tried to explain that, but unfortunately, he was out of time and he wasn't able to respond. But I think that there are a lot. This is a great example, but I don't think it's unique. I think there's a lot of material that would be very embarrassing to the original audience, and not, moral complaints about what Islam teaches, but things like this that show just how pathetic Muhammad is. Oh no, you ate my enchilada. Did I eat the whole enchilada and just the seeds are left? We can grow some more enchiladas, perhaps. Serious question. How long did it take for Muslims to actually read the Torah?
They were scared of it, and they did not read it, and they tried to stay away from it. So
a
a
while.
Muslim would start to look at it, and then they'd panic and tell people, "Oh, well, we have something better, so you shouldn't read it." But the funny thing is that they actually translated the Hermetic literature and were totally fine with incorporating that into their religion. So this esoteric Gnostic stuff, they totally embraced and says with genuine Islamic reality, right?
Mm-hmm. So Marion says Mo's daddy issues prove he's real.
Yeah, I think so too.
That story doesn't seem like something people would make up either. Jack Ray has a super chat.
And Allah will bless you in a million ways. You find the tree will grow and you will have lots and lots of wealth. This is the example that we gave to the children. And I'm letting you know that when you sow that seed by giving, you shall receive much more than you gave by the will of Allah. Give as much as you can, for indeed you will reap much more than you have sown.
Let's see, it worked. You said plus points, and then you reaped way more than you sowed because you donated some money, but you got 1,000 points out of it. So Gufti Menk is right on, right? Dr. Whitemeat says, good job to Mary. As always, I learned more than my college courses. He also says, we survived Lorenzo's onslaught without doing the Shahada. God 1, demons 0. Have to agree.
I like how he leaves as the thing ends. It's like, I have to go now, because he doesn't even really want to talk to me online again.
No, he definitely doesn't want to talk. Let's see. Potato Sandwich says, I stopped chatting for a bit to pay closer attention, but I just wanted to say I appreciate all Mary's research into these ancient pre-Islamic sources. I learned a lot in just these 2 to 3 hours. Appreciate that feedback. Dr. Whitemeat says, Mary is a beast. We must protect her at all costs. She has more knowledge in her fingernail than all the sheikhs combined. And
I have the advantage of not being hindered by absolute nonsense. That definitely helps a lot. I mean, just imagine, you have to defend this. You have to say, yes, okay, you have to affirm as a Muslim, guys, you have to affirm that this was a test given by the Jews that Muhammad passed. So that means that these things are actually from Allah. So Allah said that Alexander the Great is a true monotheist, that he saw the sun setting in a muddy pool, and he built an actual wall, which for some reason no one can find, even though everyone knows where it is, right? There are only three places, three. I'm doing Islamic math now. There are only three places in the history of the world that has ever been assigned to. Three.
Mary, how could you possibly say you're doing Islamic math and then say three?
Well, I said two first, and so thinking that.
Yeah, but I know, but you're supposed to say not three. Come on, you can't do. Muslims
well,
count
Muslim,
2,
count
2 and a
7,
half,
say 1.
4. Yep.
Yeah. So it is. So this is a challenge. You have to say that Muhammad has passed this. How can any of you say that Muhammad has passed this? Please tell me, how did Muhammad pass this test? What is your evidence that he passed this? Who are the people who converted after he passed this? Who are the Jews who said, it's Muhammad is a true prophet? Clearly, he passed this. The Jews are supposed to be in Medina because they are expecting a prophet out of Mecca. This is supposed to be, we cannot wait until we get this prophet out of Mecca. And then later Muhammad says, well, the only reason they reject me is because I'm from the Quraysh. But they're supposed to be in Medina because they expect a prophet from the Quraysh. And they're supposed to be, they can't wait till he comes. They can't wait till he comes. And here's the test for him. And he passed the test, and what? Who converted to Islam on the basis of this test? Mm-hmm. No, what happened was that they tricked him. He failed the test spectacularly. Next time we will find out why he was so worried about his answer that he took 15 days to give it. So.
Indeed.
15 days. Nice.
So, question from Potato Sandwich. Isn't there a hadith that reports one of Muhammad's companions calling the Jews to bring the Torah to prove that something was really there? Mary did cover that early on.
Yeah, I pulled up the hadith about Muhammad calling for the Torah and then saying he believes in it.
Yeah, and then, Muslims will claim that that's not a reliable hadith or whatever. As they usually do, you just throw your own sources under the bus. All the Muslims are making up lies, and this is why you should reject all those lies and believe in Islam.
So this hadith is in, someone asked where it is, the hadith about the challenge. And the hadith about the challenge is in Ibn Ishaq, and it's in just about all of the tafsir. So it's in al-Qurtubi, and it's in Ibn Kathir. I think it's in al-Suyuti. Yeah, it is. So it's in all of these different sources because it's a very common one, right? So this is the context of this verse, and it can't be otherwise because it says they ask you about. They're asking you about someone. So it's an answer to a question. And indeed, Muhammad did use 3 rocks when he was stinky. And sometimes 5 and sometimes 7. He had to do odd numbers.
Never even numbers. So hold on. Cat, now you can't. Now's not the time to stand in front of my monitor. I'm trying to read comments. So Jack Ray says there is no spoon. Hashtag the Matrix. There is no 3. However, Marion says there is 3 in Islam, but you're not allowed to say it. Just like Muslims can sin all they want, they're just not allowed to talk about it because that is what is offensive, not the sin itself. And then Jack Ray gave a super chat saying, when Momo can't say 3.
O son of Adam, spend. I will spend on you. Give, then I will give you. It's difficult because you know what? These are my last few. As it is, the price is going up, the rand is going down, this is happening. Excuses. Those are excuses. You give and watch what Allah does.
Hey, welcome to the chat, God Logic, and thank you for that super chat, Jack Ray. I got a few more of yours to read here, so buckle up, everyone. We got a number of animations ahead. God Logic, if you want to join the chat, click the pinned link at the top.
Yeah, most
sadly,
of
the
our
Muslims have been
Muslims,
too scared to
yeah,
talk.
they ran away like right towards the end of the right toward the end of the stream, and they're like, nope, nope, not going to do it.
Son of Adam, spit, and I will spit on you. Because he actually says spend, right? But if Adam sorry, son of Adam, so any of us, we spend our money on Allah, then Allah will spend on us, whatever the heck that is supposed to mean. All right, number more comments here from Furin Kazan. Of course, Alexander is a monotheist. He loved Zeus. Zeus is the king of the gods. Therefore, Zeus must really be Allah. Can't argue with that logic. And you highlighted the comment, so I'll just concede defeat or something. Jack Ray also said Mary shakes her finger at the shakes, and they get shake in fright. And then a super chat.
Brothers and sisters, why to lose this great opportunity? Remember, when the person is on his deathbed, the last minute, he will ask Allah Jalla wa'ala to be delayed for 1 second to do what? Not to pray, not to do other things, but to give sadaqah. Because sadaqah, you can give it just like this, yeah, in 1 second.
So the most important thing, apparently, the one thing that you'll beg Allah for more opportunity to do when you're dying is not praying or doing good deeds or doing anything else. It's simply to donate money to Muslim ministries like this one. Strange, but valuable information to know. Because, I mean, if we didn't have him telling this, we might think that Allah cared about our spirituality, but in fact, he only cares about our money.
Yep, and it's very clear in the context of this. What actually happened was that they went back to the Jews, who probably had something. They certainly had their Talmud with them because they were studying from it, because Muhammad referenced it a ton of times because he thought that that was a Torah. But he ran into they might have pulled that up and go, no, look, Alexander, he was a pagan. Or they might have even had a copy of this very, very, very popular myth and gone, yeah, we have this written, and guess what? It's about this guy, and look, here's our Talmud that shows that he's a pagan, and then here's this thing that isn't scripture, it's just a storybook, and it says he's a Christian. So he's quoting the tales of the ancients. This is what the test concerns. Is he repeating tales of the ancients, or is he repeating actual scripture? And this beautifully, beautifully trapped him into repeating a tale of the ancients that cannot be denied, because they had sources that showed that was a tale of the ancients and showed that that Alexander the Great was in fact pagan.
Muslims, be generous and donate via the bottom right button in the live chat. Kindly give your jizya to Thaddeus. I don't know if the Muslims are going to be paying any jizya, but I still have another super chat from Jack Ray.
O son of Adam, spend. I will spend on you. Give, then I will give you. It's difficult because you know what? These are my last few. As it is, the price is going up, the rand is going down, this is happening. Excuses. Those are excuses. You give and watch what Allah does.
No excuses, just give and wait for Allah to do something. And if nothing happens, then you better give some more, because you obviously didn't trigger Allah. Morek says, wait, prosperity preaching doctrine? Yes, you can find this in Islam. Gufti Menk is the best at it, I would say. He's definitely does it all the time, constantly, but you can find it in lots of Muslims, and comes right from the Quran itself.
Yeah, our buddy Jack Ray there has a Half-Life symbol there, and I have played Half-Life myself.
Good to know. Good to know.
I'm not like other moms. I'm cool.
So I don't
Says the least
have
cool person ever live.
right. So I don't have a black cat. The one that was on stream a second ago and is still hanging out here messing with all my stuff. She's gray with stripes. Yeah, I do have a black and white cat. He's not down here right now. The rent is going down. Are they landlords? I don't know. Allah is, I guess. I don't know. Let's see. Can Muslims just make the Alexander Romance their new holy book? God knows it's better written, more accurate, and more entertaining than the Quran. I think we should start that movement.
They might kill a lot fewer people. Although I don't know about the original Alexander Romance. They should take the Syriac legend where he's like this nice guy who gets ambushed. And he's totally doing a defensive war, guys. He's totally not off to conquer the world.
Does your cat pray Salah? I don't know, Artemis. Do you pray? Allah is the best of landlords. Best of landlords. Can we all just agree that Islam is completely irrational and an insupportable system? Yes. Unless you account support by the sword, because it is supportable in that means and has been quite effective at that. But as far as intellectually, logically, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I have put up a link, guys, to my drive where I have all the materials that I've uploaded so far
Awesome.
for my Islamic materials that like for my various streams. So I'll throw, whoopsie, I'll throw our rock magic one in there.
So, comment here from Not Deluded. Lorenzo the Muslim in the chat officially wins the golden medal in the Victim Olympics. I don't know. He does have some good competition from Big Mahmood, who I've blocked at least 20 times because all he ever does is come in here and say, I hope I'm not persecuted today. Christians always persecute me in their chats.
Oh gosh, it's that guy. I'd forgotten who that was. That if I can't stand here and then start spamming and cursing you, because if you don't throw him out right away, he'll start like losing his mind. Very.
This one I laughed at, and you guys probably heard me laughing when it was originally said some time ago. Mary debating the blonde Muslim would be like a pair of army boots versus a single Dorito.
She is a total grifter. She doesn't believe a word that is coming out of her little mouth. She is just soaking suckers up for money, and people are dumb enough to spend it. So that's it. She does not believe any word that she says.
Yep, a reminder, we do have calls open for any Muslims who want to come in here and defend their book.
This is literally going to be the first time, I think, that we have had literally no Muslim at all want to talk about anything because they don't want to be asked about this.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I don't. Well, no, that's not true. I was going to say I don't think one of them made any on-topic comments. There was, of course, Alonzo saying, the Quran was written first. All these other things copied the Quran.
In which case, Muhammad failed and he's a false prophet. He failed because he made up a story that didn't exist whenever he was challenged to produce something that the Jews had in their holy scriptures. The Jews said, write something from our holy scriptures, and Muhammad went, okay, I'll write something brand new that nobody's ever heard before. This is how stupid Alonzo's argument is. But it is quite conclusively shown that this is all from, like, even the form Syriac legend which of course is copied from something earlier, because both Syriac legend and the homily, they have to have a common source, and that common source is before either one of them, right? This is how this works. The things that things are taken from come before the things that happen after. But even with that said, it has to be before 591, because there's no idea that Armenia would ever be in Roman hands before the end of the world, or before the final victory of Rome and through it the 1,000-year reign of Christ in the Syriac legend.
So Friend Kazan says, Artemis, that's a pagan name. That's haram. So Artemis's brother is Apollo, and we also have a cat named Demeter. So we'll just take all the pagan gods and demote them to the status of a house cat.
It's Demeter and not Demeter?
We call her Demeter.
No, I'm going to mess you up.
Jack Ray says, Alexander the Not So Great just doing a special operation over the rest of the world, and super chat from him.
I can't answer this question in a 20-minute interview, nor is it wise to do so, which is why I never brought this topic up myself. You will not find one lecture of mine about this issue. It should never be brought up in public. And I don't like these idiots, and they are idiots, wallahi. This is not something you discuss amongst the masses, ya akhi. It's not wise. I encourage anybody who is really interested to go deep to take the class. I do this class. It'll be 1 year later.
All right. Yasser Qadi says it's not wise to talk about or support Christian ministries in public. Soyub says, Muhammad said women have sperm and their breasts are testicles. Is that true? I'll have to let Mary answer this. I'm pretty sure that's just a joke people make, and it's not really something Muhammad said.
Well, women do have, yeah. Actually, no. It really does say that it's actually supposed to be from their collarbone, right? Because go to my embryology stream. So the Greeks thought that male sperm came from an organ that was attached to the backbone and then flowed into the testicles, where it was stored and then released early on. And Muhammad, and they also thought that some of them thought that women's sperm could either become a baby or could become milk, and that was the same substance excreted in different ways. So yes, milk is sperm according to the Quran, because the Islamic source is not explicitly the Quran. But whenever it says that things come between the backbones and ribs, it actually means the ribs of the women up here, because they believe that that's where it comes from, because it needs to have a chance to reach the boobs first before it moves down into the womb area if it doesn't collect in the boobs first. So yes, that's why I was saying that whenever it says loins, it actually means back. And it means that in a very literal sense in the Quran and in the Islamic sources, that semen does come from that backbone. So yes, they knew about semen. They did not know that there was sperm, like there were individual things in there. And a lot of times we use the wrong word. We say, oh, it's talking about sperm. No, they knew about this fluid, a seminal fluid. They didn't know that there was anything inside of it. It was just a liquid that congealed, like cheese congealing. Whenever you put something in milk, you get cheese. Well, if you put the semens together, they congeal.
So Jack Ray says Quran equals holy hell, which is related to this comment. But holes at Yasser Qadi. Yasser Qadi is going to forever be known as the holes in the narrative guy. Just like Yusuf Estes is always going to be known as the Alexander the Great invented Catholicism guy. Cheeky says, just take my class. Clyde asks if I have a dog. I do not. That's why I'm a prophet of Islam, because I have no dogs, only cats. Jack says, I would not want to debate you on things. Well, that's good, because Mary has a degree in hadith and things. So
Yeah, I have the
That
same
might
degree.
be yeah, right.
I have the, yeah, I have the same degree that that our buddy
Uthman ibn Farouk.
Usman
He has
Ibn
a
Farouk has.
master's
Yeah.
in hadith and things. Very true. Carol says by rent they mean jizya, so the rent's going up, the jizya's going up, definitely. Jack Ray says half-life.
Brothers and sisters, why to lose this great opportunity? Remember, when the person is on his deathbed, the last minute, he will ask Allah Jalla wa Ala to be delayed for 1 second to do what? Not to pray, not to do other things, but to give sadaqah, because sadaqah you can give it just like this, in 1 second.
You're going to ask to be delayed so that you can play Half-Life. And he gives the 1337 donation. Very nice.
Nice.
Very nice. And Maruk says, if it works for Benny Hinn, why not for Islam? Indeed, why not? So Not Delulu gave a prophecy earlier saying that Lorenzo would make several excuses, such as you're being disrespectful instead of coming up live. So you're only half correct. He didn't really make any excuses today. He didn't say he's at the gym like he's been known to do, and that his phone's not working, or that I'm too mean or whatever. He just disappeared. So I'll give you half credit, which still makes you a better prophet than Muhammad, though.
Dude, there was somebody at who was on God Logic stream today who was at the gym. You could hear the clanks behind him. So didn't stop him, just stops our buddy who he really looks like Jim material.
Well, yeah, I mean, so he was in the chat for, I don't know, 40 minutes. And then he's like, I'm out of here. I'm going to the gym. And then like 3 minutes later, he was back in the chat.
And he was in his house. That was the funny thing. Like 3 minutes later, he was in his house because he
I mean, at that time, he was just in the text. But like within 5 minutes, we opened up the phones and he called in and he was back at home. Strange. Too many Mary got PhD. I first thought you were going to say too many Mary PhD.
Well, fortunately, it's not. I don't have Andrew Tate's PhD.
Oh yeah, you don't have a pimping hose degree? No.
I do not have a pimping
That's
hose
such a
degree.
shame. Such a shame.
So.
Yep, I just got a couple more, and then it looks like we're going to close out since we didn't get any callers today.
Nope. I think they're getting scareder and scareder of me. They need to come back.
Weird. Bennett said dhul-qarnyn is a good example of name dropping and light social networking. You gain credibility for Islam by pretending that everyone under the sun, including Alexander the Great, was a prophet of Islam. Why not? Why not? Not Delulu said Muslims 20 years from now will be saying that Prophet Muhammad is found in Tom and Jerry, that this is the miraculous truth of Islam.
Well, this is just like, imagine that someone went, tell him, go to the prophet and ask him about the child who lived with the lightning scar. And he goes, I shall tell you of the lightning scarred one. He was orphaned when they tried to kill him, and they sought his death, but they could not kill him. And then the snake-headed one was tried to vanquish him, but he triumphed over him. I am a true prophet. Like, this is the level, guys. This is Islam. Millions and millions of people believe in this thing.
This is the best advertisement for Islam that's ever existed in the world.
Also, the cat, Puba, definitely, prophet of Islam, Artemis the cat. Mr. Uzair, son of Allah, said a Roman bisexual pagan was a Muslim prophet. Allahu Akbar.
And it's not open to debate, so there's no point in opening that up.
Malcolm says Muslims want to make us their dhimmis, but Muhammad already made Muslims his dummies. I added his there, but I think that works better.
We are proud of that.
So there's a new highlight coming up.
Okay. Soyub says the Jews were naughty. Mo got busted. Very true. And Houston Euler said the wasn't the correct answer to the two horns of Daniel 8:20, which was actually revealed by the true Gabriel.
No, because they didn't ask about two horns, right? So the two horns are the kings of Media and Persia, right? And the male goat is kingdom of Greece, et cetera, et cetera. So no, they didn't ask him about, tell us about the two horns. No, what they said was, tell us about the one who went from the east to the west, like went all the way from the east to the west, to the ends of the earth, who saw everything. And because that's in not only the Alexandria Romance in all of its forms, it's also a separate circulating letter. Because remember that it circulate in all sorts of forms, because this was an age when you didn't have a printing press, so people had to copy things by hand. So something circulated alone, and then they got gathered, and then they got put together, and then that particular version got circulated a ton. But one of the really popular things was this supposed letter from Aristotle to Alexander saying that you have gone from the far east to the far west to the whole ends of the earth, kind of thing. So that's what it's really talking about there. So the correct answer is dhul-qarnyn, but the issue is that he was tricked into saying that this was something from sacred scripture and that he was a Muslim and all the rest of that.
Yeah, Muslims, this is your chance to win extra rewards from Allah. Come on and defend Islam. Show us one good or valid reason to become a Muslim. I've been asking every Muslim that I have, well, not every, but probably about 80-90% of the time I have a conversation with a Muslim. I ask them what their best evidence that Islam is true, and I rarely even get someone to attempt to reply. And then when they do reply, it's at least half the time it's the Trinity makes no sense. We Muslims, we follow monotheism. Well, great.
Have we yet met a Muslim who could articulate their aqidah? Right?
No.
You have to be able to articulate your aqidah, right? That which is your creed, right? What you believe Allah to be. Please tell us. I have yet to meet a Muslim who is not ashamed to explicitly say, this is our aqidah, who even knew it. Like only 2% of Muslims have any idea what their aqidah is, unless they're Salafi, and then they'll be like, oh, I'm just a Salafi. But then even then, they don't understand what they actually believe. And they're like, oh, but it makes, our Allah makes so much sense. Well, you believe that your Allah has 2 hands and a shin and a foot, but they're totally not like our hands and a shin and a foot. And he has at least 3 eyes because it's in the plural form. So like, dude, who is your Allah? You believe that every single name of Allah is an attribute, and all of these things are fused together inside of him. They're all not each other, so they're not ontologically the same, so they're not the same substance. And they're fused together in pieces, and they're each self-standing, which actually means what you have is this composite God who is made of many lesser gods. You have your Autobots Unite God, a transformer God, where all the little pieces come together, and now that's your big Allah. That's what you have. And some of them are more powerful than other things because your mercy overcomes your wrath. The wrath is imperfect and is weaker than mercy, which totally overcomes it. And yes, indeed, Una, it is a God with no butthole, which is always important to remember, because the reason why Jesus can't be God is because God cannot poop, and it's proof that you're not God if you poop. And that is
what they call dawah.
Absolutely.
The best answer is Allah knows breasts.
We're proud of that.
Yeah.
Well, he definitely knows the primordial womb, which grasps his gonads, which is one we should never forget.
And we're proud of that.
All right. Let's see. Potato Sandwich says that is when, so referring earlier to when Muslims start finding Islam in Tom and Jerry, he says That is when Tom actually catches Jerry. Until then, the mouse wins, and Muslims don't like that. I'm not so sure. After all, Allah is a mouse. Maybe this is the miraculous proof that Jerry always evades Tom because he is Allah, the mouse. I don't know. Good question. Super chat.
Who ate the apple? You ate the apple. The whole apple. Yes, the whole apple. You ate it. But a small seed, you left it. You put it back into the earth. What happened? Allah, through His power, caused that to grow and to give you how many apples? Thousands.
Thousands of apples. Thousands and thousands. And yet, Muslims are scared of a girl. That's right. They fear Mary. They sure do. You know, when they come up here and they talk to me, or they talk to God Logic, or they talk to any other male, then they don't want to lose, but at least if they lose, they have an excuse. If they lose to Mary, then they're like, crap, I just lost to someone who's supposed to be half as intelligent as me. That not only means I'm an idiot, that also means that Islam is false.
Yeah, well, if it's totally open, they'll always come up. If it's like totally open to any topic. But there are topics they don't want to watch. And this is one of those topics that nobody wants to watch for some curious reason. Muslims do not want to say that their prophet won a challenge that would prove whether or not he was a true prophet.
So Una said, I thought mice were Jews. Well, that's one theory of Muhammad's many theories as to what the Jews got turned into, which is probably what the original comment was referencing. I just changed it into the silly joke of Allahu Akbar, meaning Allah is a mouse. Carol B said that Allah told us, the boy who lived. Ryan says, Allah got fired from the county library. He keeps losing his books. Indeed he does. And then brags about how he preserves them and no one can disturb them, and so on and so forth.
But the most brilliant thing is that Muslims really think that what was revealed, because Muhammad taught that nothing new was revealed in the Quran, guys. So that means that Muslims came away from him believing that each ayah also appeared in the previous books. So this needs to be in the Torah. Not just that he's like mentioning these things, not just that it gives context, but your average Sahaba at this time honestly believed that maybe it's in a different order, right? Maybe there isn't Surah Al-Kahf that's like in one whole thing. Maybe you have to chop it up into pieces, okay? But that each section, word for word in other languages appears. That's what the miracle of the Quran is supposed to be, that it's supposed to be the reproduction of what has been revealed to others of the book of Allah. Allah has a book. From this book, he reveals things to all of his prophets. So it's all the same material. And there are only a couple of things in the Quran that are supposed to be so special that no one before them has had, right? So Surah Al-Fatiha is supposed to be so special that no one before has had that. And one verse out of the second Surah, Al-Baqarah, is supposed to be so special that no one before has had it. And it's the last verse that Muhammad reveals in Mecca shortly before he dies. And everything else, every other ayah, because that's one ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah is supposed to be different. So every other ayah is supposed to be from the book that has also been revealed to others. That's why it's called a reminder, because the ayahs are the same.
And obviously that means even the chapter cursing Muhammad's relatives was also in the prior books.
Yes, that is the best part, because at the time Muhammad said Surah Al-Fatiha, and then this final verse that we just now had out Surah Al-Baqarah, so this has to be revealed right before he dies, right? That these are the only things that have never been given before to any other prophet. The chapter cursing Muhammad's relatives have already been there. So he's saying that those things were specifically in a previous revelation, and they're just prophecies that this particular thing would happen, is what the context you have to get. So people were getting all these things before that no one could decipher. No one had any idea what was meant. It had no meaning to them, but it needs to be found in the previous books. So you've got to really read what the Quran is saying and not read it through lenses saying, hey, I know what Islam believes now, but what is being said here? And then you go back to the earliest sources of the people who are the least ashamed of what Islam really teaches, and guess what you get? You get you get a very clear picture that matches what the Quran itself says. And I like that, Bo Rudder. Surah al-Fatiha was so special that Ibn Masud didn't have it.
I was going to read that next, but you had to
funny.
get up first.
Well, he said it was a prayer, but yeah, it was in Quran.
Mm-hmm.
But
so if everything in the Quran was revealed before, that means even when it says remember, remember, remember. So the previous books also said to remember, and the ones before those said to remember, and the ones before that said to remember. So it was reminders all the way down, right?
Yeah,
so what comes before the reminder? It's what are you talking about? It's reminders all the way down.
Yeah, maybe he leaves room for the idea that the first one didn't say reminder, but that's why it calls them the people of the reminder. So the people of the previous scriptures, the Jews and the Christians, they have copies that are, so the Injil is supposed to be the same as the Torah with maybe a little bit of extra stuff. And the Quran is supposed to be the fullest revelation. So everything else ought to be shorter than it. Because the Quran comes last. It's the final guidance. It's all you need. You don't need anything else. And so it's supposed to be this final guidance. So it's the fullest, completest revelation, because Isa ibn Maryam came along and supposedly revealed extra things. He brought new laws and canceled some things and brought some new stuff. And the idea of abrogation is that new stuff can be brought, but that old stuff should be there still. So the Quran ought to be the longest of all of them.
Which is funny, since it's the shortest. Well, at least of the two that they actually can point to, even though there should be thousands of previous examples of revelation. So you said Muhammad had a PDF file. Only men are allowed to download it. Bo Ryder said, wasn't Yusuf Estes a pastor or a priest? No, that is totally false. He didn't even make that claim himself. Muslims started to elevate it. What he actually claimed, which is also ridiculous, but he claimed that he was a music minister. Of course, he left Christianity at like age 17. So you can make your own judgments about what kind of leadership that meant. He probably played a musical instrument once in a church service and thus claimed that he was a music minister. And then somehow that gets elevated to he was a great pastor or priest who knew everything there is to know about Christianity.
Including what's on the website of the Catholic Church about how they were.
It's on their website. Don't go like this. It's on their website.
Fern Kazan says, if we made Harry Potter 10 times worse, insanely contradictory, and translate into Arabic, would that win the verse like it challenge?
We'd probably need a Wattpad Harry Potter fanfic.
Indeed. Oh yeah, I'm wrong. Every convert to Islam was a pastor or a priest. Well, they could have some legitimacy, since the Bible does say that all Christians are priests. So, of course, that's not what they mean, but they could have some legitimacy to it. Maybe a herd of goats came in and ate all the missing stuff from the Quran. Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah,
all kinds of things are going on.
The Torah had the whole Quran in it, and then the goats came in and ate it. That's the problem.
So just a couple more here from earlier. Jack Ray, I thought of a good use for the Quran. Shred it and use it as recycled, eco-friendly kitty litter. Well, I got some bad news for you. Cats hate that stuff. We tried to use it, and the cats would not use it. So you're gonna have to find another use for your Quran. They only like real litter. They don't like the the paper litter at all. I mean, I'm sure you could probably find a cat every here and there that would use it, but none of our cats would. They hated it.
Okay, my last comment. Someone said when Non Delulu said that when people say Islam is bad religion, I tend to disagree with them. It's a good religion, but only for men. For women, it's a nightmare. Well, you know how it says that Muhammad came to ease. He's supposed to be the one written in their scriptures who will ease their burdens and unfasten their chains and so on. In the Islamic sources, this is actually explained as being all the ways in which Muhammad makes it legitimate for men to have sex with women and how easy it is for them to have sex with women. So I give you 4 wives. Do you see how I make things easy for you? I let you contract with a prostitute and as long as you give her money ahead of time, that counts as a legitimate transaction, and so you can have sex with her as long as you pay her and agree on payment before you have sex with her. You just can't have lovers. You have to have a contract with payment. So prostitution, good. The other is not so good. If you don't have enough money to marry, well, then you can pay to have intercourse with other men's slave girls. That is how Islam makes it easy for men. And that's what the sources say. Absolutely horrific.
I was chuckling here at Breakfast Gun in reference to the Quran kitty litter. Oh, that sounds like miraculous proof then. So this directly relates to another, well, not directly, but indirectly relates to another comment I saved from earlier, that people need to create a channel that is giving these false proofs along the same lines that Muslims will give. That kitty litter, that might not work since it'd be obvious when you're shredding a Quran that you're not a Muslim. But not Delulu said, what's next? Prophet Muhammad founded toothpaste advertisement. So I think that this is what someone really needs to do, right? Because Zakir Naik claimed that Muhammad's name is found in the Hindu scriptures, which shouldn't be something that you'd be happy about, right? You shouldn't be trying to give authority to these Hindu texts that by saying that they prophesize Muhammad. So what you should do is you should just start making videos on any random thing and say that Muhammad is prophesied by it and see if anyone catches on that you're not a Muslim. I have a feeling they're not going to. You can just go to the Iliad. Muhammad is prophesied in the Iliad. He's prophesied in the Odyssey. He's prophesied in Plato's Republic. And see if they understand that how this doesn't make any sense, or if they're like, oh my gosh, you've strengthened my faith in Islam. I had no idea Muhammad was mentioned in so many things. And it's not like you have to make a good argument. Just look for anything that remotely resembles Muhammad and say that it's a prophecy about him. And finally, from Lorenzo, good night, Lady Hitler. You and I will fee on salvation. I don't know what fee means. Improve your intimate moments with your computer. Give some time to your hubby. The Surah Like It challenge has been met by Lorenzo.
One is extremely worked up about why do white ginger people turn to Islam? Is it because they find out Muhammad was a white ginger man? And I answered you in the comments already, so you should have already seen that. Just calm down. There is one dude named Hamza, who is a British ginger dude, who basically said, the reason I went to Islam is because they think I'm gorgeous here because I'm like super pale and ginger, and lots of British people don't like ginger men. It's the world's stupidest reason to convert to a religion, but yes, they like Muslims like pale people, and they like blondes and gingers, ginger men and blonde women. So that would be exactly why some white men go there, because then all of a sudden they're super sexy, just like blonde women. Like, doesn't matter what your face looks like. You can look like you have run into a wall at 60 miles an hour. If you are a pale natural blonde, you will have a line down the street wanting to make you their wife if you are a blonde girl.
And a lot of it has to do, well, not the white people converting, but why they're fond with attention has to do with the massive inferiority complex that Muslims have. Their God tells them that they are the best of all creatures, that Christians are the worst of all creatures. And then they look at the world and they see that all the most desirable places to live in the world, more or less, are Christian nations. So then if someone, and for some unknown reason, well, really not that unknown, because they're massively racist and they see everything in racial terms, when someone with white skin converts to Islam, they think this is victory over Christianity. They couldn't care less if a black Westerner who is a devout Christian converts to Islam. But if a white person who has never been to a church in their life converts, we have victory over Christianity. We will make you our new prophet. Here, take this pile of money to keep saying nice things about Islam. Am I wrong? I mean, am I exaggerating?
No.
I don't think so.
Oh, and if anyone can find me, because I've lost the clip, I was looking for it, where Darren Hamza, he was at Speaker's Corner saying that a big reason I went to Islam is because they think I'm hot here. So if anyone can find that for me, send it to me at toomanymaryscom@gmail.com.
All right, so we are wrapping up here. We'll get a comment from Skanderberg. You got a few minutes to say whatever you want, and then we'll sign off.
Yes, thanks for having me again.
Absolutely.
Great show, another wonderful show. Every show is not like other, very, very colorful. And God bless you all. Mary Harb is becoming a problem for Allah again, kicking butt again. 1.5 billion Muslims, where are they? Where's the debaters? 0 to nothing. It's shocking me. The topic you guys have you guys touched a few topics. It's understandable for humans when they live in a time of ignorance. People grow up, grow old, and die as an ignorant. But today, 21st century, having you guys opening our eyes, and it's unacceptable to grow old and to die as an ignorant. And this show is not great just for us. It's a great show for Muslims too. It's an opening eye for them. They should not take this as an insult. Sooner or later, they're going to appreciate you guys for this wonderful work. I'm learning every day, and I don't mind becoming a Muslim, but with a peaceful scholar like you guys, not from the jihadi scumbag armed with AK-47. No, thank you. I don't want to be a Muslim like that,
You're going to be a true submitter to God, the real God.
Yeah, and 1.5 billion or 4, they say, before they are slaughtering each other when they do their count. How come Allah is no shortages of armed jihadis, but he's out of peaceful jihadis with a pen like you guys? How come? Where are they? Why they don't come and counter you guys?
Well,
challenge you guys?
It's because every time that Islam has tried to respond in that way, they've been destroyed, just like Muhammad was destroyed when he was unable to fulfill. He could have been a true prophet of Mecca. That was his chance. If he had actually successfully completed the challenge and had proven himself to be a true prophet, then he would have had Mecca. He never would have had to have killed people. But because he showed himself to be a fraud, the only way he could win was through the sword.
Yeah, like Mr. Tadeh said earlier, it's very evil but very successful strategy. It works with a strategy of terror. Like look, you know, 700+, maybe 1,000 homes burned, Christian homes burned in Pakistan not too long ago, and churches being burned. Do you know how many manpower you need to do such a destruction? So Allah has a lot of soldiers to burn and destroy Christian homes, but have zero professor, scholar from so-called Al-Azhar University. Where are they? Hiding behind their 7 wives? Where are they?
Yeah, that's why all of the Islamic materials, the stuff that is written, is really aimed at the least knowledgeable people imaginable.
Yeah.
They're aimed at the ignorant. Whereas, look at me. Whenever I aim things, I try to aim things at the most knowledgeable. So no matter what the level of knowledge you have as a Muslim, then my arguments are still valid. I am not preying on ignorance or stupidity or just the fact that you were indifferent to something or you just don't know. I want you to know your religion as well as possible.
Yeah, you know, it's live and learn. Why they have to be so offended and hold on so strong? I mean, my God in earth when I was a kid was my father. If someone comes forward and tells me that your father was bad and did this and did that, but he didn't know anything, yeah, I'll feel ashamed that day. But I'll accept that this is a fact, and I'm not going to go on a killing spree for the fact that my father may have been a bad guy. So now our Muslim brothers and sisters are learning every day from me, thanks to you guys. Things that they never heard. All they heard in a mosque that Bismillah Rahman Rahim and some baloney like that, you know, and some little peaceful verses. And yes, to hate the non-Muslims. So they teach them some hate with the eye drops a little bit, just enough to keep them on alert, you know. But there's a lot of dark verses there that you guys are exploring, and this should be a lesson not just for me as a non-Muslim or non-Muslim, but it should be a lesson especially for Muslims. They need to know in what club they belong and why not. And or like speaking of Mecca, the stone, the black stone. You guys had the show before, a wonderful show.
Mm-hmm.
There was nobody there to challenge you. Black stone. There is no black stone. It's a black wax. Why they like to be manipulated? Even the few rocks that are there, they are brownish. Like
they were just really dirty. That's the best part. It's really funny.
Their color is like a Santa Cecile granite. Go ahead.
Yeah, we had a reference to that earlier. The black face stone, the white stone pretending to be black.
And it doesn't need a college degree to learn. The rocks are outwardly like an egg shape. I mean, in a river, in a valley, in a mountain, in a moon, in a Mars, the rocks are outwardly. I never see a rock inward like that. Why they don't put that so-called holy stone on top of some surface so people can see it and touch it and adore it? But they hide it. And listen, I'm not trying to go more in details or to show dirty, but that looks more like a woman's private, and let it be. This is the truth. I like to take my gloves off and say the truth.
Yeah,
90%.
According to some sources, Islamic sources, it was originally displayed on a pillar like all the other Beetles were, and then was incorporated into the wall. But that's Islamic sources. So anyway, we are ready.
We're going to close out here. 2 quick comments or questions, from Not Delulu. Are we permitted to re-upload your videos? Absolutely.
Thanks for having me, and have a good night, everybody.
Yes, if people would
We'll pray out here in a sec.
Yeah.
I miss Christ's salvation. He's not there tonight. I miss him. He's very knowledgeable and very nice guy.
He's missing. He's been missing the last 2 weeks. But
he was in the chat earlier.
Okay.
He came in fairly late. But yeah.
Peace to everybody, to Muslims and non-Muslims. Peace to everybody.
God bless.
The really useful thing would be to clip pieces. And I'm giving you guys this information not so that you can do like 2-hour streams and then another 2-hour stream, right? I'm doing the exhaustive big covering thing so that you guys can then take these resources, right? And take pieces of them and parts of them and make them into more compact things. I'm giving you all the angles. So if anybody challenges you on anything, you can pull out more and more and more. So if they go, no, it was written in the 7th century after Muhammad because someone says so, this shows you why it's not, why it can't be, why that it's coming from that 7,000-year prophecy and it's altering it to make it 6,000 years, and it's not it's talking about Huns, so why isn't talking about Avars and Khazars, and it's the wrong year, and so like it gives you the materials so that you can answer all the questions. So
Yeah.
anytime Michael
So to
Smith,
summer,
just show up and
right.
chat, and we answer just about everybody. If we don't answer you, it's because we don't see you or it's not currently relevant to what we're talking about. But usually at the end of every stream, we're fairly open about topics.
Yep. So just to summarize there, I license all my videos under a Creative Commons license, which without you asking gives you explicit permission to take and reuse the content. For legal purposes, provide a link back to the original. I mean, you're not going to get in trouble if you don't, but that is the terms of the license agreement, is that you agree to link to the original. And I definitely encourage you to take clips. Re-uploading the whole thing, I mean, that might get a few extra views, but if you produce something new without like actually, putting in all the effort to make your own presentation by presenting a short clip that people will find valuable, then you have a good chance of getting a lot of views on that. And whether you re-upload videos or whatever you do, I definitely encourage you to take the material, use it in your discussions with Muslims. Valrudder asked for you to give a summary before we close out, so we'll get your summary and then we will pray out.
All right, so what we've looked at this time is the entirety of the Quran's explicit references to dhul-qarnyn. And these verses were given in response to a challenge by Jews to produce something that was in their sacred scriptures about the man who had gone from the east to the west of the ends of the earth, right? So it has to be, the answer has to be from their scriptures. It has to be something known to them because they are readers of the book, for his answer to be legitimate. And yet what he produced had already been written, not in sacred books, but in very popular fiction, about a real figure who was a well-known pagan, who had all of this embroidered novelization after him, and then a Christian fanfic version of it too, that was even later. And Muhammad took lots of pieces from these fictional sources that we can trace back. We can trace back the materials and the understanding to different authors at different times. It's all fiction. He was a real person. He really lived and he really did certain things. He was a real pagan. And it gave him fantastical activities, like seeing where the sun set in between the fetid sea and the shining sea. And so in the Quran, it becomes a stinking, muddy pool. And there's the story about these gates that he supposedly built that the real Alexander did not build. He didn't build any gates at all. And so suddenly it becomes Gog and Magog on the other side of these gates that should be real gates and should be in existence according to the Quran, and aren't. They don't exist because they're made up. There's nothing made of iron and brass out there that ever describe these, because it's fiction. And so what Muhammad did is he got trapped by these clever Jews into giving a tale of the ancients, and which is why in the Islamic sources there's absolutely no indication that after he gave the correct answer that a whole bunch of people from Mecca converted, because they were supposed to follow him if he gave the right answer. That's what the Jews had said. And if you go back to Medina, of all of Medina, before Muhammad started killing all the Jews, one dude, Abdullah ibn Salam, that Muhammad had renamed, right? He renamed him to this. One dude who's Jewish and his family converted to, or went to follow him, and no one else did. And yet they're supposed to be there in anticipation at this Qurayshi prophet who's supposed to come. So you can tell what's true and you can tell what's fiction in the actual sources that we're looking at. You can tell where the lies are, and you can tell that Muhammad got caught red-handed, and humiliated. So that is my conclusion, guys. God bless all of you, and stay away from Islam. Christ is Lord. Islam is false.
So tomorrow I'll be on Your Brother in Christ channel. We'll be giving a summary of the recent Seek and Share Truth conference. A bunch of people will be on that stream. I believe David Wood will be among them. Hatun Tosh, I think, is calling in as well. So should be a very fun evening. So that's tomorrow on Your Brother in Christ. Saturday, I will have my Bible study. So usually that's on Friday. This week it'll be on Saturday and Sunday. I should be on Lloyd DeYoung's channel giving a version of my presentation on how to deal with atheism that I gave at the Seek and Share Truth. Obviously an interactive version as opposed to me just lecturing, but the same kind of material. So if you haven't seen that yet, or you saw it and because of the audio you had trouble focusing or whatever, good opportunity to tune in Sunday for that. And then next Tuesday we'll be back here to continue the study of dhul-qarnyn, this time focused on the literature. Next time we'll focus on the historical Alexander the Great, I believe. One final thing to be on the lookout for, and this is the first time that this has been announced, but September 1st, so a week and a half, the following Friday, will be the next meeting of the Apologetics Supergroup. I'm going to try to get a Muslim scheduled for each hour to come present some arguments. I suspect I'll probably only get one or two actual Muslims to do that. So whenever there's no Muslim scheduled for an hour, what we'll do instead is look at a short clip from a well-known Muslim apologist presenting their arguments for Islam. So I was asked to kind of structure it and have a set agenda for each hour this time around. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to call it the Apologetics Supergroup versus the Da'is, or the Dawagandists, depending on my mood. So let me pray us out, and we'll meet again soon. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this stream today. We thank you for all the friends in the chat that we got to interact with, and we thank you for all the Muslims that came in here. We ask that you work to illuminate the truth, that you help people to remember the parts of this presentation that were useful, and to cause people to forget anything that we said that was false or useless. We thank you so much on a personal level as well, and we pray for blessings for those in the chat, and we pray that you will continue to guide Muslims to find this video and other videos on my channel, and that you will give me the wisdom to help lead people out of Islam. We ask these things in Jesus' blessed name. Amen. All right, good night, everyone. God bless.